The emergency room doors at Riverside General Hospital in Detroit burst open at 1:47 a.m., and nobody noticed the quiet blonde nurse standing near the medication cart. Sarah Bennett had been a night shift trauma nurse for 3 years, invisible to everyone except the patients who actually needed her. But when the military convoy screeched into the ambulance bay 30 seconds later, armed federal agents flooded the hallway, and every single one of them stopped cold when they saw her face. One agent's radio crackled. "Confirm visual on Phantom 6. Sarah's hands didn't shake. They never did. Dr. Marcus Webb, the hospital's head of trauma surgery, pushed past security with his usual arrogance. "What the hell is going on?" The lead agent didn't even look at him. He was staring at Sarah. "Ma'am," the agent said quietly, "we need you." If you want to know how a nurse everyone dismissed became the one person a dying man would trust with his life, stay with me until the very end. Like this video, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Sarah Bennett learned a long time ago that people only see what they expect to see. The doctors at Riverside General expected a small-town nurse with pale skin and an unremarkable face. They expected someone who followed orders, stayed quiet, and never caused problems. So that's exactly what Sarah gave them. She showed up on time, worked her shifts without complaint, and went home to a one-bedroom apartment where nobody asked questions. What they didn't expect was the scar tissue across her shoulders, hidden under scrubs that never quite fit right, or the way her eyes tracked movement in doorways before she even turned her head, or the fact that she could assess a trauma patient's survival odds in under 10 seconds, while everyone else was still figuring out where to stand. Dr. Marcus Webb noticed, though. He noticed everything about Sarah, and he hated all of it. "She makes people uncomfortable," Webb told the nursing director one afternoon, loud enough for half the break room to hear. "Like she's waiting for something to go wrong." The nursing director, a tired woman named Patricia, who'd been at Riverside for 20 years, barely looked up from her paperwork. "She's good at her job, Marcus." "She's weird," Webb snapped. "Patients complain she doesn't smile enough. The other nurses say she never talks about her personal life. And have you seen the way she writes those incident reports? Like she's filing military intelligence or something." Patricia finally met his eyes. "Are you asking me to fire her because she's thorough?" Webb's jaw tightened. "I'm asking you to consider whether she's the right fit for this team." What Webb didn't say, what he'd never admit out loud, was that Sarah made him feel inadequate. She didn't flinch during codes, didn't hesitate when someone was bleeding out, didn't need his approval or his guidance. And for a surgeon who'd built his entire reputation on being the smartest person in every room, that was unforgivable. Sarah knew all of this, of course. She'd dealt with men like Webb before. Different uniforms, same fragile egos. She just didn't care anymore. The night everything changed started like any other night. Sarah clocked in at 11, checked the patient board, and began her rounds on the 3rd floor. 2 post-op recoveries, 1 diabetic crisis, and a teenager who'd wrapped his motorcycle around a telephone pole but somehow walked away with nothing worse than a concussion. "You're lucky," Sarah told the kid while checking his vitals. "Wear a helmet next time." The teenager grinned at her, still high on adrenaline and whatever painkillers they'd given him. "You always this cheerful, nurse?" "Always," Sarah said without smiling. By midnight, the ER had quieted down to its usual weeknight hum. A few minor injuries, 1 possible appendicitis, nothing the day shift hadn't seen 1,000 times before. Sarah was restocking a supply closet when she heard Webb's voice echoing down the hallway. "I don't care what the policy says, get it done." She recognized the tone. Webb was in one of his moods. Sarah grabbed her tablet and headed toward the nurse's station, where Webb was standing over a first-year resident named Kim, who looked about 2 seconds away from tears. "I'm telling you the scans don't support surgery," Kim was saying, her voice shaking. "The patient's stable. We should wait." "Are you questioning my judgment?" Webb cut her off. "No, I just think, you're a resident. You don't think. You observe and you learn." Webb snatched the tablet from Kim's hands. "I'm scheduling the procedure for 6 a.m. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the board." Kim's face went red, but she didn't argue. She just nodded and walked away before anyone could see her cry. Sarah set her own tablet down on the counter, her movements deliberate. Webb noticed. He always noticed when Sarah was nearby. "Something you want to say, Bennett?" Sarah looked at him with the same flat expression she gave everyone. The resident's right. Patient's vitals are stable. Surgery can wait. Webb's face darkened. Excuse me? You heard me? The nurse's station went completely silent. Even the ward clerk stopped typing. Webb stepped closer, lowering his voice to something that might have been threatening if Sarah hadn't heard worse from actual dangerous people. You think 3 years on the night shift makes you qualified to second-guess my surgical decisions? I think you're rushing into a procedure because you're bored, Sarah said evenly, not because the patient needs it. For a moment, Webb looked like he might actually explode. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, his face turning an ugly shade of red that made Sarah wonder if he'd ever had his blood pressure checked. Then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that meant someone was about to lose their job. You're done, Webb said quietly. Clean out your locker. Security will escort you out. Sarah didn't blink. You can't fire me. I don't work for you. No, but I can make sure you never work another shift at this hospital. Webb pulled out his phone. I'm calling administration right now. By morning, you'll be blacklisted from every trauma center in the state. He wasn't bluffing. Sarah knew that. Marcus Webb had connections, favors owed, enough pull to make her unemployable if he wanted to. She also knew it didn't matter. Sarah picked up her tablet and walked toward the break room without another word. Behind her, she heard Webb already dialing, his voice smug and satisfied. Patricia, we need to talk about Sarah Bennett tonight. The break room was empty except for a janitor mopping the floor in the corner. Sarah pulled her backpack from her locker and started transferring her personal belongings. A spare sweater, an energy bar, a battered paperback novel she'd been reading during slow shifts. She was zipping the bag closed when her phone buzzed. The message was from an unknown number, inbound critical trauma. ETA, 12 minutes. Possible hostile engagement. Secure facility. Sarah stared at the screen for exactly 3 seconds. Then she put her backpack back in the locker and walked straight to the ER. The ambulance bay was chaos. 3 Riverside security guards stood near the entrance looking confused and frightened, their radios crackling with conflicting instructions. Someone had activated the hospital's emergency lockdown protocol, which meant all exterior doors were sealed except for the ambulance entrance. Sarah pushed through the growing crowd of nurses and orderlies, her eyes scanning for whoever was in charge. What's happening? A young nurse asked, her voice tight with panic. Are we under attack? No, Sarah said automatically. Then she saw the headlights. The convoy came in fast. 3 black SUVs with government plates, flanked by 2 armored vehicles that definitely didn't belong to any local police department. They formed a defensive perimeter around the ambulance bay in under 30 seconds, and then armed personnel in tactical gear started pouring out. Not police, not paramedics, federal agents. Sarah's heart rate didn't increase. Old habits. The agents moved with practiced efficiency, securing the entrance and establishing a perimeter while hospital staff backed away in confusion. One of them, a woman with lieutenant's bars on her vest, spotted Sarah immediately. Clear the area, the lieutenant barked at the crowd. This is a federal operation. All non-essential personnel need to step back. The nurses scattered. The security guards retreated toward the waiting room. Sarah stayed exactly where she was. The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. She said something into her radio, too quiet for anyone else to hear. Then she walked straight toward Sarah, hand resting casually on her sidearm. Ma'am, I need you to... The lieutenant stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening slightly. Wait. Confirm identity. She was staring at Sarah's hospital badge. Another agent jogged over, holding a tablet. He glanced at the screen, then at Sarah, then back at the screen like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. It's her, he said quietly. The lieutenant's entire demeanor changed. Her hand moved away from her weapon. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made several nearby staff members turn and stare. Ma'am, we have an urgent situation. Federal officer down, multiple GSWs, severe internal bleeding. He's requesting you specifically. Sarah's expression didn't change. Requesting me by name? By call sign. The lieutenant pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a text message. Get me Phantom 6 or I die here. The words were typed with someone's non-dominant hand, letters uneven and shaky. Sarah looked past the lieutenant toward the convoy, where medics were already pulling a stretcher from the middle vehicle. Even from this distance, she could see the blood. Who authorized medical transport to a civilian facility? Sarah asked. He did. The lieutenant's voice was grim. Said he wouldn't let anyone else touch him. Pulled rank even while he was bleeding out. Behind them, Dr. Marcus Webb finally pushed his way through the crowd, his face red with indignation. What the hell is going on here? Webb demanded. This is a hospital, not a military base. You can't just... The lieutenant ignored him completely. She was still looking at Sarah. Ma'am, I need an answer. Will you help him? Sarah watched the medics struggling with the stretcher. The patient was fighting them, one hand clutching his chest while the other reached toward the hospital entrance like he was searching for something, or someone. She'd seen that look before. Desperation mixed with recognition, the kind of expression people got when they spotted a familiar face in a war zone and suddenly believed they might actually survive. Get him inside, Sarah said. Trauma Bay 2. I'll prep. She turned and walked into the hospital without waiting for Webb's approval. Behind her, she heard the lieutenant snap at her team. You heard her. Move! Webb sputtered something about protocols and authorization, but nobody was listening to him anymore. The federal agents had already claimed the entire ambulance bay, and the wounded officer was being rushed through doors that locked automatically behind them. Sarah moved through the ER like she'd never left. Her hands found supplies without looking. Her mind was already running through treatment protocols for gunshot wounds, entry points, probable organ damage, blood loss calculations. The other nurses stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Sarah, what's happening? Kim asked, the young resident from earlier. Who is that patient? Federal officer, Sarah said, pulling on gloves. Multiple gunshots. Critical condition. Get me 4 units O negative and call for a surgeon. Webb's already... Not Webb. Sarah's voice cut through the room. Call Dr. Singh from cardiothoracic. Tell her it's urgent. Kim hesitated for only a second before grabbing the phone. The trauma bay doors crashed open. 4 medics rushed in with the stretcher, and Sarah got her first clear look at the patient. He was maybe 40, dark hair soaked with sweat, tactical vest half removed to expose blood-soaked bandages across his chest and abdomen. His skin was gray, early shock, maybe 10 minutes away from cardiac arrest. But his eyes were sharp, aware, searching. They locked onto Sarah's face, and something like relief washed over his features. Phantom, he gasped. You're real. They said you were dead. Sarah moved to his side, her hands already assessing injuries. Save your breath, Mitchell. You're a mess. The patient, Mitchell, actually laughed. It came out as a wet cough that splattered blood across his lips. Still giving orders, huh? Someone has to. Sarah cut away the remaining bandages, exposing 3 distinct entry wounds. 2 in the chest, 1 in the abdomen, through and through on the shoulder. Who did this? Classified. Mitchell's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. Don't let them take me anywhere else. I trust you. Nobody else. I'm a civilian nurse now, Mitchell. I don't... Bullshit. His grip tightened. Once a combat medic, always a combat medic. You saved my life in Kandahar. You saved Rodriguez in that pile of rubble. You pulled Chen out of the... That was a long time ago, Sarah said quietly. Not long enough to forget. Mitchell's eyes started to lose focus. Please, I'm asking as a friend. Sarah looked down at him. This man she'd served alongside in places that officially didn't exist, during operations that had no names and left no records. She'd lost count of how many times they'd covered each other, stitched each other up, dragged each other out of situations that should have killed them both. And then the mission that ended everything. The one nobody talked about. The one that got her discharged and erased from every database. Hang on, Sarah told him. I've got you. Mitchell smiled and closed his eyes. The monitors started screaming. He's crashing, Kim shouted. Sarah's training kicked in before her brain caught up. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. Airway secured, IV lines established. Trauma assessment completed in under 90 seconds. BP's dropping, one of the medics called out. 60/40. Internal bleeding, Sarah said. Likely splenic rupture. We need to get him to surgery now. The trauma bay doors opened and Dr. Marcus Webb strode in, already scrubbed and gloved, his expression radiating territorial authority. I'll take it from here, Webb announced. Bennett, step aside. Sarah didn't move. Webb's eyes flashed dangerously. That's an order. He's a federal officer under protective custody, Sarah said without looking up from the patient. The chain of authorization goes through the agents outside, not through you. This is my hospital. Actually, a new voice interrupted, it's not. Everyone turned. The federal lieutenant stood in the doorway, flanked by two armed agents. In her hand was a document with official seals that Sarah recognized even from across the room. A federal medical directive. Webb stared at it like it might bite him. What is that? This, the lieutenant said calmly, is a direct order from the Department of Defense authorizing Sarah Bennett to provide emergency medical care to Officer James Mitchell under federal jurisdiction. Any interference with her work will be considered obstruction of a federal investigation. The trauma bay went dead silent. Webb's face cycled through about 6 different shades of red before settling on purple. You can't be serious. She's just a nurse. I'm a board-certified surgeon with 15 years. Officer Mitchell has specifically refused treatment from anyone except Ms. Bennett, the lieutenant continued. Given his clearance level and the classified nature of his current assignment, his medical decisions supersede hospital protocols. Sarah caught the lieutenant's eye and saw something unexpected there. Respect, maybe even sympathy. How long has this authorization been active? Sarah asked quietly. The lieutenant checked her tablet. Since 2019, never revoked. Apparently someone in the Pentagon believed you might be needed again someday. 2019. The year after Sarah left the service, the year she'd disappeared into civilian life and tried to forget she'd ever been anything other than ordinary. Someone had been paying attention after all. Webb looked like he'd been slapped. This is insane. Patricia, call administration. Call the board. We can't let... Dr. Webb? The lieutenant's voice went cold. Leave the trauma bay. Now. For a moment, Sarah thought Webb might actually refuse. His hands were trembling with rage, his breathing shallow and fast. This was a man who'd spent his entire career being the most important person in the room, and now he was being dismissed like a first-year med student. Then one of the agents shifted his stance slightly, hand moving toward his sidearm, and Webb's survival instincts finally kicked in. He left without another word. The moment the doors closed, Sarah turned back to Mitchell. All right, let's see what we're working with. The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos. Sarah worked with the kind of focused intensity that made everyone in the room forget she was technically just a nurse. She identified injuries, prioritized treatments, and coordinated with the surgical team that arrived from cardiothoracic, with an efficiency that spoke of years spent working in conditions far worse than a well-equipped trauma bay. Dr. Kavita Singh, the cardiothoracic surgeon, watched Sarah work with undisguised amazement. Where did you train? Singh asked while they prepped Mitchell for emergency surgery. Classified, Sarah said automatically. Singh raised an eyebrow. That's not a medical school. No, Sarah agreed. It's not. They got Mitchell stabilized enough for transport to the OR. His vitals were still critical, but no longer immediately life-threatening. As the surgical team wheeled him toward the elevators, Mitchell grabbed Sarah's hand one more time. The operation, he whispered. They're still looking, still hunting. You need to... Later, Sarah said firmly. Right now you focus on not dying. Hard to die when Phantom Sixes got my back. Mitchell's smile was weak but genuine. Some things never change. The elevator doors closed, taking him away to surgery, and leaving Sarah standing in the hallway with half a dozen federal agents and one very confused nursing staff. Kim approached carefully. Sarah, what just happened? Exactly what it looked like, Sarah said. A patient needed help. I helped him. But those agents called you Phantom 6, and that authorization document said Department of Defense. Are you? Sarah met the young resident's eyes and saw all the questions forming there. Questions she couldn't answer. Questions that would put people in danger if she tried. I'm a trauma nurse, Sarah said quietly. That's all you need to know. She started to walk away, but Kim's voice stopped her. Dr. Webb is going to lose his mind over this. Sarah looked back over her shoulder. I know. What she didn't say was that Marcus Webb losing his mind was the least of her problems. Because if Mitchell was here, bleeding and desperate and calling in a 7-year-old authorization just to make sure Sarah was the one treating him, then something had gone catastrophically wrong with whatever operation he was running. And if the operation had gone wrong badly enough to nearly kill him, then the people responsible were still out there, still hunting. Sarah found the federal lieutenant waiting near the nurses' station. studying a tablet with deep concentration. "What aren't you telling me?" Sarah asked. The lieutenant glanced up. "A lot. Most of it classified." "Give me the non-classified version." The lieutenant considered for a moment, then gestured toward an empty conference room. They stepped inside and she closed the door. "Officer Mitchell was working a joint FBI-DOD investigation," the lieutenant said carefully. 3 months ago, his team discovered evidence of a large-scale medical fraud operation. Someone's been systematically covering up surgical mistakes, falsifying records, collecting insurance payouts on procedures that were either unnecessary or actively harmful to patients. Sarah's blood ran cold. "How large scale?" 32 deaths across 6 states. Maybe more. The paper trail leads back to multiple hospitals, but the network is sophisticated enough that proving coordination has been nearly impossible. And Mitchell was getting close. Too close. The lieutenant's expression was grim. Someone leaked his investigation to the people he was hunting. They tried to eliminate him before he could testify. "Why bring him to Riverside specifically?" The lieutenant hesitated. "Because one of the hospitals under investigation is here, Riverside General." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Sarah had worked at Riverside for 3 years. She'd seen her share of questionable decisions, watched surgeries go wrong for reasons that didn't quite add up, filed incident reports that disappeared into administration without explanation. But actual fraud? Systematic murder disguised as medical mistakes? "Who's the target?" Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The lieutenant met her eyes. "We can't confirm yet, but Mitchell's notes mentioned a surgeon, someone with enough authority to alter records and intimidate staff into silence." Sarah thought about Webb, about his aggressive push for unnecessary surgeries, about the way he treated residents who questioned him, about the patient files that sometimes went missing from the nurse's station. She thought about this teenager on the motorcycle, lucky to be alive. How many others hadn't been lucky? "I need to see Mitchell's files," Sarah said. "That's classified information in an ongoing federal. That man just asked me to save his life using a 7-year-old authorization that somehow never got revoked," Sarah interrupted. "Either you trust me or you don't. Pick one." The lieutenant studied her for a long moment. Then she handed over the tablet. "You've got 10 minutes. After that, this conversation never happened." Sarah took the tablet and started reading. The files were incomplete, heavily redacted, with entire sections blacked out for security reasons. But what remained painted a damning picture. A pattern of unnecessary surgeries, patients who went in for routine procedures and came out with complications that led to extended hospital stays. Insurance fraud, Medicare fraud. And underneath it all, a trail of altered medical records that made it almost impossible to prove negligence. Almost. Mitchell had been meticulous. He'd tracked down nurses who'd left Riverside under mysterious circumstances, found family members of deceased patients willing to talk, collected incident reports that had been filed but never investigated, and at the center of it all, appearing again and again in the documentation, was one name: Dr. Marcus Webb. Sarah handed the tablet back to the lieutenant. "He doesn't know you're investigating him." "Not yet." Mitchell was trying to gather enough evidence for a warrant when they came after him. Now we're racing the clock. Either we find proof before Webb realizes he's under scrutiny, or he destroys evidence and walks away. "How long until Mitchell can testify?" The lieutenant shook her head. "Even if he survives surgery, he's looking at weeks of recovery. We don't have that kind of time." They stood in silence, the weight of it pressing down like a physical thing. Then Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked down at the message and felt her stomach drop. It was from Patricia, the nursing director. "Administration wants to see you, 6 a.m. Webb filed a formal complaint. "I'm sorry." Sarah showed the message to the lieutenant, who swore quietly. "He's moving fast," the lieutenant said. "Probably suspects something's wrong. If he gets you fired before Mitchell wakes up." "I know." Sarah pocketed her phone. "I need to get back to work." "Are you sure that's wise? If Webb's involved in what we think he's involved in, you could be putting yourself in danger." Sarah thought about Mitchell on that stretcher, bleeding and desperate. She thought about all the patients whose deaths had been covered up, whose families were told their loved ones had simply been unlucky. She thought about why she'd left the service in the first place, because she was tired of watching people die for no reason while the people responsible walked away clean. "Danger's relative," Sarah said. "I'll be fine." She left the conference room and headed back to the ER, where the night shift was in full chaos trying to process what had just happened. Federal agents were still stationed at every entrance. Mitchell was in surgery. And somewhere in this hospital, Marcus Webb was planning his next move. Sarah pulled up the patient board and started checking assignments. The teenager from this motorcycle accident was scheduled for discharge in the morning. The diabetic crisis had been stabilized. The appendicitis case had gone to surgery hours ago. Everything looked routine. Everything looked normal. But Sarah had been doing this long enough to recognize when something was wrong. The patients were fine. The cases made sense. The paperwork was in order, which meant whatever Webb was planning, it wasn't about the patients at all. It was about her. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her personal files. Years of incident reports, patient notes, observations she'd recorded during late-night shifts when nobody else was paying attention. She'd kept everything, uploaded copies to a secure cloud server, maintained backups of backups because old habits died hard. If Webb wanted a fight, she'd give him one. But first, she needed to survive until morning. The ER quieted down around 3 a.m. Most of the federal agents had moved to secure positions outside Mitchell's surgical suite. The night shift nurses had gone back to their normal routines, though Sarah caught them staring at her when they thought she wasn't looking. She was restocking the medication cart when she heard footsteps behind her. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the hallway, still in his scrubs, his face carefully neutral. "We need to talk," he said. Sarah kept working. About? About what happened tonight. About those federal agents. About why a trauma patient specifically requested a nurse instead of a qualified surgeon. He's a former colleague. Webb's laugh was cold. A colleague from where exactly? Because I've checked your employment history, Bennett. Before Riverside, you worked at a rural clinic in Montana. Before that, nothing. No medical school on record, no nursing program. Just a certification that appeared out of nowhere and a background check that comes back cleaner than anyone I've ever seen. Sarah closed the medication cart and turned to face him. "What's your point?" "My point is that you're hiding something, and whatever it is, it's big enough to bring federal agents into my hospital at 2 in the morning. Webb stepped closer. "So I'm going to ask you one more time. Who are you really?" Sarah met his eyes and didn't blink. "I'm the nurse you tried to fire 3 hours ago. That's all you need to know." "You think you're clever." Webb's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You think those agents will protect you, but they'll leave eventually, and when they do, you'll still be here. Still just a nurse in my hospital." "Actually," a voice said from behind Webb, "she won't." They both turned. The federal lieutenant stood there with another official document, this one looking even more formal than the last. "Ms. Bennett has been placed on temporary federal protective status pending the resolution of an ongoing investigation," the lieutenant said. "Effective immediately, she's been granted full medical authority to supervise Officer Mitchell's care and provide consultation on related cases. Any attempts to terminate her employment or restrict her hospital access will be considered interference with a federal investigation." Webb stared at the document like it had personally insulted him. "You can't do this." "It's already done." The lieutenant handed the paperwork to Sarah. "You'll need to sign here and here." Sarah took the pen and signed without hesitation. She'd made her choice the moment she'd walked back into that trauma bay. There was no going back now. Webb's face had gone past red into something closer to purple. "This is my hospital. You can't just, Dr. Webb." The lieutenant's voice cut through his protests like a blade. "I'd be very careful about what you say next. We're investigating multiple deaths potentially linked to medical fraud at this facility. If you have information relevant to that investigation, now would be an excellent time to share it. If not, I suggest you let us do our jobs." The hallway went completely silent. Webb looked between Sarah and the lieutenant, and for the first time since she'd met him, Sarah saw something other than arrogance in his expression. She saw fear. "I want my lawyer," Webb said quietly. "That's your right." The lieutenant pulled out her phone. "Though I should mention that requesting legal counsel at this stage of a preliminary investigation does tend to raise questions. Are you sure that's the route you want to take?" Webb's jaw worked silently for several seconds. Then he turned and walked away without another word. The moment he was gone, Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you," she said to the lieutenant. "Don't thank me yet. That protective status is real, but it only lasts as long as Mitchell needs medical supervision. Once he's stable enough to move to a federal facility, you're on your own again. How long do I have? The lieutenant checked her tablet. 72 hours, maybe less if Webb lawyers up and starts making noise. We need evidence before then, or he walks. Sarah thought about the files she'd been keeping, the incident reports, the patient records, years of documentation that she'd assumed nobody would ever care about. Maybe she'd been wrong. I need access to hospital records, Sarah said. Patient files going back at least 5 years, surgical outcomes, incident reports, insurance claims. You know I can't authorize that without a warrant. Then get a warrant. The lieutenant smiled slightly. I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, keep your head down. Webb knows we're watching him now. If he's guilty, he'll either run or start covering his tracks. Either way, things are about to get very interesting around here. She left Sarah standing in the hallway, holding a document that made her simultaneously the most protected and most exposed person in the entire hospital. The sun was starting to rise over Detroit when Sarah finally clocked out. She'd worked a full shift plus 3 hours of overtime, coordinated Mitchell's post-surgery care, and filed enough incident reports to keep administration busy for weeks. She was exhausted. She was also angrier than she'd been in years. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her encrypted files. Every incident report she'd ever filed, every patient death that didn't quite add up, every surgery that went wrong in ways that seemed almost deliberate. She'd been collecting evidence without even realizing it. Now she just had to figure out how to use it before Webb destroyed everything. Her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. Mitchell's stable. Surgery went well. He's asking for you. Sarah pocketed the phone and headed toward the elevators. The ICU was on the 6th floor, far from the ER chaos, where critical patients recovered under round-the-clock monitoring. The federal agents had set up a security checkpoint outside Mitchell's room. They checked Sarah's ID, scanned her protective status document, and finally waved her through. Mitchell was awake but groggy, hooked up to enough monitors to run a small data center. He looked significantly better than he had 4 hours ago, which admittedly wasn't saying much. "Hey," he managed. His voice was rough from the breathing tube. "You look terrible." Sarah pulled up a chair. "You look worse." "Bear?" Mitchell tried to smile and grimaced. "Thanks for not letting me die." "Thanks for not dying." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd been through enough together that words weren't always necessary. Then Mitchell's expression turned serious. "They told you what I was investigating?" "Yeah." "And?" Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him the first page of her incident report files. "I've been documenting irregularities at this hospital for 3 years. I didn't realize what I was seeing at the time, but looking at it now," Mitchell's eyes widened as he scrolled through the data. "This is exactly what we needed. Dates, patient names, surgical outcomes. Christ, Bennett, you basically built half our case without knowing it. Webb's going to figure out something's wrong soon. Maybe he already has." "Let him." Mitchell handed the phone back. "The moment he starts destroying evidence or running, we've got him. The Bureau's been waiting for him to make a mistake. You might have just given them the opening they need." Sarah stood up. "Get some rest. I'll check on you later." "Hey, Bennett?" She paused at the door. Mitchell's expression softened. "I'm glad you're not dead. I know things ended badly back then, but I'm glad you landed somewhere safe." Sarah thought about her empty apartment, her quiet life. 3 years of being invisible while people like Webb destroyed lives without consequence. "Yeah," she said softly. "Safe." She left before he could see the lie in her eyes. The morning shift was arriving when Sarah finally made it to the parking garage. She was halfway to her car when a voice called out behind her. "Miss Bennett?" Sarah turned to find 2 people in dark suits approaching, a man and a woman, both with the kind of careful posture that screamed federal agent. "FBI?" the woman said, showing her badge. "Special Agent Martinez, this is Special Agent Reeves. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your employment at Riverside General Hospital." Sarah's exhaustion evaporated instantly. "Am I under investigation?" "Not at all. We're interested in your observations regarding Dr. Marcus Webb and his surgical practices." Martinez pulled out a digital recorder. "Would you be willing to provide a formal statement?" Sarah looked between them, calculating odds. This was it. The moment where she either walked away and let Webb keep destroying lives, or she stepped forward and risked everything she'd built.
Not much of a choice, really. I'll need coffee, Sarah said, and somewhere quiet to talk. This is going to take a while. Agent Martinez smiled. We've got both. Follow us. They drove to a federal building downtown where Sarah spent the next 6 hours describing everything she'd witnessed at Riverside General. Every questionable surgery, every altered record, every incident report that disappeared.
She showed them her files, explained her documentation system, walked them through patient cases that looked like simple medical misfortune but had patterns that suggested something darker. By the time they finished, both agents looked simultaneously excited and horrified. This is more than we hoped for, Reeves said. Combined with Mitchell's investigation and the financial records we've been tracking, we might actually have enough for indictments. How long until you move on Webb? Sarah asked. Martinez exchanged a glance with her partner. That depends on several factors. We need to coordinate with the hospital board, prepare warrants, ensure we don't tip him off before we're ready to act. In other words, I go back to work tomorrow and pretend everything's normal. Exactly. Martinez's expression was sympathetic. I know that's difficult, but if Webb suspects we're building a case, he'll run. I know. Sarah stood up, her entire body aching from exhaustion and stress. How much danger am I in? The agents exchanged another look. We'll have surveillance on you at all times, Reeves said carefully. But I won't lie. If Webb realizes you're cooperating with us, things could get dangerous. People who run medical fraud operations at this scale usually have contingencies, resources, sometimes contacts in places that make eliminating witnesses easier than fighting charges. Sarah thought about Mitchell bleeding out on a stretcher, about the desperation in his eyes when he'd grabbed her wrist and begged her not to let anyone else treat him. I've handled dangerous before, she said quietly. Martinez handed her a card. This has my direct line. Anytime, day or night. If anything feels wrong, call immediately. Sarah pocketed the card and left. The drive back to her apartment was a blur. She kept checking her mirrors, watching for tails, looking for anything out of place. Old habits from a life she'd thought she'd left behind. Apparently some things never really went away. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Small, clean, impersonal. The kind of place someone lived when they didn't want to get attached to anything. Sarah dropped her keys on the counter and was about to collapse onto her couch when her phone buzzed. Another message from an unknown number. Check your email. J.M. James Mitchell. Sarah opened her laptop and pulled up her encrypted email account, one she'd set up years ago and barely used. There was a new message waiting, sent from a bureau server with enough security protocols to make her old commanding officers jealous. The message contained a single attachment, a video file labeled Riverside_security_07192.mp4. Sarah clicked play. The video was security camera footage from inside Riverside General, dated 3 months ago. It showed Dr. Marcus Webb in a supply closet, carefully removing medication vials from a locked cabinet and replacing them with different vials from his pocket. The timestamp read 3:47 a.m. Sarah watched as Webb systematically swapped out at least 10 different medication containers, then closed the cabinet and walked away like nothing had happened. She rewound the video and zoomed in on the vials. The labels were identical, same manufacturer, same drug names. But the serial numbers were different. Someone had replaced real medication with something else, something designed to look legitimate but cause complications. Maybe deaths. And Webb had been caught on camera doing it. Sarah's phone rang. Martinez. Did you see it? The agent asked without preamble. Yeah. We found that footage buried in hospital archives. Someone tried to delete it, but didn't quite finish the job. Combined with your incident reports and Mitchell's financial evidence, we have enough to arrest Webb tonight. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Tonight? We're moving fast before he realizes how much trouble he's in. I wanted to give you advance warning. Stay away from the hospital for the next 12 hours. Things are going to get messy. What about my shift? Call in sick. Trust me, you don't want to be there when we bring him in. Martinez hung up. Sarah sat in her apartment, staring at the frozen image of Marcus Webb's face on her laptop screen. This man who'd spent 3 years making her feel small and incompetent, who'd tried to fire her for questioning his judgment, who'd been systematically killing patients while everyone else looked the other way. He was finally going to pay. But as Sarah sat there in the growing darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Webb was arrogant and cruel, but he wasn't stupid. If he'd been running a medical fraud operation sophisticated enough to evade federal detection for years, he had to have contingencies, escape plans, ways to protect himself when things went bad. And things had just gone very, very bad. Sarah pulled up her hospital access remotely and checked the current patient board. Everything looked normal. No emergencies, no unusual activity. Then she noticed something. The teenager from the motorcycle accident, the one who'd been scheduled for discharge that morning, was still listed as an active patient, still in recovery, still under observation. Sarah frowned and clicked through to his file. The notes were strange. Multiple entries about complications during routine examination, orders for additional tests that didn't make sense for a simple concussion. And at the bottom, a new surgery scheduled for 7 p.m., signed by Dr. Marcus Webb. Sarah's blood ran cold. She grabbed her phone and called Martinez. "I thought you were staying home," the agent answered. "Webb scheduled an emergency surgery for tonight, a patient who should have been discharged this morning. I think it's a setup." Martinez swore. "We're still 2 hours from having the warrant. If he's inside the hospital, he is. And if that kid goes into surgery, he might not come out." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "We're on our way. Don't do anything stupid." Martinez hung up. Sarah grabbed her keys and ran. The drive to Riverside General took 12 minutes. Sarah parked illegally and sprinted toward the main entrance, her mind racing through possibilities. If Webb knew he was being investigated, he might use the surgery as cover to destroy evidence. Or maybe he was just desperate enough to take one more victim before going down. Either way, that teenager was in danger. Sarah flashed her badge at security and headed straight for the surgical wing. The halls were quieter than usual. Night shift hadn't fully kicked in yet, leaving gaps in coverage that someone could exploit. She found the pre-op area and scanned the patient roster. The teenager, Danny Carlson, age 17, was already being prepped. An anesthesiologist Sarah didn't recognize was reviewing his charts. The surgical team looked rushed, disorganized, like they'd been pulled together at the last minute. "Where's Dr. Webb?" Sarah asked the nurse. "Scrubbing in. Surgery starts in 10 minutes. Sarah pulled out her phone. No response from Martinez yet. The FBI was still en route, still coordinating, still following procedures while a patient was being wheeled toward an operating room. She had to make a choice. Sarah walked straight into the pre-op bay and approached Danny's gurney. The teenager was groggy from pre-medication but still conscious. "Hey," Sarah said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Sleepy," Danny mumbled. "They said something about swelling in my brain? Need emergency surgery?" Sarah checked his charts. Nothing about brain swelling, nothing that would justify emergency intervention, just notes about precautionary measures and specialist recommendation, all signed by Webb. "Danny, I need you to trust me," Sarah said quietly. "You're not having surgery tonight." The nurse nearby looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "This patient is being discharged immediately." Sarah pulled Danny's IV. "Get me a wheelchair. You can't—" "Federal investigation," Sarah said, showing her protective status document. "This patient is a potential witness and under protective custody. Anyone who interferes will be charged with obstruction." It was a complete bluff. Danny wasn't a witness to anything, but the nurse didn't know that. The nurse hesitated, clearly torn between following hospital protocol and challenging what sounded like a federal order. Then the surgical bay doors opened, and Dr. Marcus Webb walked out, already in scrubs, his face dark with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Bennett?" Sarah stepped between Webb and Danny's gurney. "Protecting a patient from an unnecessary procedure. That's not your call to make." "Actually," a new voice said, "it is." Agent Martinez strode into the pre-op area, flanked by 4 other agents with FBI badges clearly visible. Behind them, hospital security looked confused and overwhelmed. Martinez walked straight up to Webb. "Dr. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for medical fraud, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." The rest of the Miranda warning faded into background noise as Sarah watched Webb's face cycle through shock, rage, and finally resignation. Federal agents moved in, cuffing him efficiently while the surgical team backed away in horror. The entire hospital seemed to hold its breath. Then Webb looked directly at Sarah, his eyes burning with hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. "No idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Sarah replied.
doctor who forgot what that was supposed to mean. Agents led Webb away while Martinez approached Sarah. "You couldn't wait 12 minutes?" the agent asked, but there was no real anger in her voice. "Kid was about to go under anesthesia. I didn't have 12 minutes.
Martinez glanced at Danny, who was now wide awake and staring at everything in confusion. "You were right. We found evidence Webb was planning to induce a surgical complication, make it look like a reaction to anesthesia. Kid would have died on the table." Sarah's hands started shaking, post-adrenaline crash. "Go home," Martinez said gently. "We'll handle the rest. You've done enough for one day." But Sarah knew it wasn't over. Webb's arrest was just the beginning. There would be investigations, trials, testimony. Her quiet life was gone, burned away the moment she'd chosen to help Mitchell instead of walking away. And somewhere deep down, beneath the exhaustion and fear and anger, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years: relief. Because for 3 years she'd been hiding, pretending to be ordinary, convincing herself that keeping her head down and doing her job was enough. But it wasn't enough. It had never been enough. Sarah walked out of Riverside General Hospital as the sun set over Detroit, leaving behind a career she'd built on anonymity and stepping into a future she couldn't predict. Behind her, federal agents swarmed the building. Ahead of her, reporters were already gathering at the main entrance, drawn by rumors of a major arrest. And in the ICU on the 6th floor, James Mitchell was probably watching everything on the news and laughing his ass off. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed a message. "You owe me dinner when you can eat solid food again." The response came back immediately. "Deal." "And Bennett?" "Welcome back." Sarah smiled despite everything. Because he was right. She was back. The drive home felt different somehow. The city looked the same traffic, same buildings, same Detroit skyline against the darkening sky. But Sarah felt like she was seeing it for the first time, or maybe like she was finally seeing it clearly again. Her phone rang. Patricia, the nursing director. "Sarah, what the hell is happening? The FBI just arrested Dr. Webb. They're saying he was under investigation for months. Did you know about this?" Sarah thought about how to answer that, about what she could say versus what she should say. "I suspected something was wrong," she said carefully. "I didn't know the full extent until tonight." "Jesus Christ!" Patricia sounded shaken. "Do you have any idea what this means? The lawsuits, the investigations, the media circus? This hospital's reputation is destroyed." "Better destroyed than complicit," Sarah said quietly. Silence on the other end. Then, "You're right. I should have listened when you raised concerns. I should have paid attention. You weren't the only one. I know. But I was the one with authority to do something." Patricia's voice cracked slightly. "Those patients trusted us, Sarah. They trusted this hospital, and we failed them." Sarah didn't have an answer for that. Because Patricia was right. They had failed. All of them. Everyone who'd seen something wrong and chosen not to look too closely. Everyone who'd dismissed concerns because Webb was important and convincing and had the right credentials. Everyone who'd made it easier for him to keep killing people. "What happens now?" Patricia asked. "I don't know. Federal investigation, probably a complete audit of every surgery Webb performed, lawsuits from families, maybe criminal charges for anyone who helped cover things up." "Are you coming back?" Sarah thought about the question. Thought about walking back into Riverside General, where everyone now knew she'd been secretly documenting irregularities for years, where doctors and nurses would wonder what else she'd been recording, where every interaction would be colored by suspicion and resentment. "I don't think so," Sarah said. "I think my time at Riverside is over." "I understand." Patricia paused. "For what it's worth, you were a good nurse. One of the best we had. I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner." "Thanks." Patricia hung up. Sarah pulled into her apartment complex and sat in the car for a long moment, watching the streetlights flicker on as night settled over the city. Her phone buzzed with the text from Martinez. "We'll need your formal testimony next week. Also, you might want to avoid checking the news for a few days. Webb's arrest is already trending nationally." Sarah didn't check the news. Instead, she went inside, took a shower hot enough to burn, and collapsed onto her bed, fully intending to sleep for approximately 16 hours. She was almost asleep when her phone rang one more time. Unknown number. Sarah almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Bennett?" A man's voice, professional and cautious. "My name is David Carlson. I'm Danny's father. The agents told me what you did tonight, how you saved my son." Sarah sat up. "Mr. Carlson, You saved his life," David interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "The FBI showed me the evidence. Webb was going to kill him, make it look like an accident, and you stopped it. You risked your career, maybe your life, to protect my son. It was the right thing to do. Maybe. But that doesn't make it easy." David took a shaky breath. "Thank you. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for being brave enough to do what nobody else was willing to do." He hung up before Sarah could respond. She sat in the darkness of her apartment, phone still in her hand, and felt something crack open inside her chest. All the years of hiding, all the nights spent wondering if she'd made the right choice leaving the service, all the quiet compromises she'd made to stay invisible, gone, burned away in a single night. Sarah put the phone down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow there would be questions, investigations, testimony, maybe even danger if Webb had partners who decided she knew too much. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Sarah Bennett slept without nightmares, because she'd finally stopped running from who she used to be. And in the ICU on the 6th floor of Riverside General Hospital, James Mitchell watched the news coverage of Webb's arrest and smiled. Some things never changed. Phantom 6 always came through when it mattered. The news vans arrived before dawn. Sarah woke to the sound of diesel engines idling outside her apartment complex and the murmur of voices setting up equipment. She rolled over, checked her phone, and found 63 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. The top headline on every news site read the same: FBI arrests prominent Detroit surgeon in multi-state medical fraud conspiracy. Beneath that, a secondary headline: former military medic helps expose decades of cover-ups. Someone had leaked her name. Sarah threw on clothes and looked out her window. 3 news crews were setting up on the sidewalk below, cameras pointed at her building. A reporter was already doing a stand-up piece, gesturing dramatically toward her apartment. Her phone rang. "Martinez." "Don't go outside," the agent said immediately. "Media's already camping your location. We're sending a car to get you out." "How did they get my name?" "Hospital staff, probably. Maybe someone from the investigation leaked it." "Does it matter?" Martinez sounded exhausted. "Webb's lawyer is already spinning this as a witch hunt. They're claiming you fabricated evidence because he tried to fire you, that this is revenge, not justice." Sarah's jaw tightened. "That's bullshit." "Of course it's bullshit, but it's going to play well on cable news. Disgruntled employee versus respected surgeon. You know how this works." Sarah did know. She'd watched enough careers get destroyed by media narratives to recognize the pattern. Facts didn't matter if the story was compelling enough. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay quiet. Don't talk to reporters. Don't post anything online. We're arranging protective custody until the trial, but it'll take a few hours to process the paperwork." "I'm not hiding." Martinez was silent for a moment. "Sarah, Webb's operation was bigger than we thought. We've identified at least 6 other surgeons in 4 states who are part of the network. These people have resources, connections. If they think you're a threat, I am a threat. Exactly, which is why you need to disappear for a while." Sarah looked at the news crews below, at the reporters rehearsing their intros, at the narrative being built in real time about who she was and what she'd done. "No," she said quietly. "Sarah, if I hide, they win. Webb's lawyer gets to paint me as unstable and vengeful. The victims' families watch a surgeon walk free because the key witness was too scared to show her face." Sarah grabbed her keys. "I'm not giving them that." "Where are you going?" "To do what I should have done years ago." She hung up before Martinez could argue. The walk to her car felt like moving through a gauntlet. Reporters rushed forward the moment she stepped outside, cameras tracking her movement, microphones thrust in her face. "Ms. Bennett, is it true you were fired the same day as the arrest? Did you have a personal vendetta against Dr. Webb? Are you being paid by the FBI?" Sarah kept walking, eyes forward, expression neutral. She'd done this before in different contexts, ignored cameras, stayed calm under scrutiny, refused to give them the reaction they wanted. One reporter stepped directly into her path. Young guy, probably fresh out of journalism school, hungry for a breakthrough story. Ms. Bennett, sources say you served in classified military operations. Is that true? Sarah stopped. The reporter's eyes lit up, sensing he'd hit something real. Can you confirm or deny reports that you were dishonorably discharged? No, Sarah said calmly. No, you can't confirm, or no, you weren't discharged? No comment. She stepped around him and got into her car. The reporters swarmed the vehicle, still shouting questions, but Sarah ignored them. She pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward downtown Detroit. Her phone rang constantly. She ignored every call except one. Mitchell's voice was weak but clear. You're all over the news. I noticed. They're saying you're unstable, that you have a history of insubordination. Also noticed. Mitchell coughed, the sound wet and painful. You doing okay? Sarah thought about that question, about the reporters and the accusations, and the way her entire life was being dissected by strangers who'd never met her. I've been worse, she said. Yeah, I remember. Mitchell's tone softened. Kabul. That embassy extraction. You were surrounded, outgunned, and still refused evac until every civilian was out. That was different. Not really. You've always had this thing about doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. He paused. Just don't let it cost you your life this time. Sarah pulled into the parking garage of the federal building. I'll call you later. Inside the FBI field office was controlled chaos. Agents moving between desks, phones ringing constantly, evidence boxes stacked against every available wall. Martinez spotted Sarah immediately and crossed the room with an expression that mixed relief and frustration. You were supposed to wait for the car. I drove myself. I noticed. So did every news outlet in Michigan. Martinez gestured toward a conference room. Come on, we need to prep your testimony. The next 4 hours were brutal. Agents walked Sarah through every incident report, every patient file, every observation she'd documented over 3 years. They cross-referenced dates, verified details, built timelines that connected Webb's actions to specific patient deaths. This one, Agent Reeves said, pointing to a file from 18 months ago. Thomas Harrison. Went in for routine gallbladder surgery, died from complications 3 days later. Sarah remembered Harrison. Middle-aged accountant, healthy except for the gallstones. Should have been an easy procedure. Webb performed the surgery, Sarah said, kept him under anesthesia longer than necessary. When Harrison developed respiratory issues post-op, Webb delayed treatment for almost an hour. Why? Hospital was short-staffed that night. Webb was covering multiple cases. He prioritized a cosmetic procedure over Harrison's complications. Reeves made a note. Cosmetic procedures pay better. Yeah. They went through case after case, each one a person who'd trusted Riverside General with their life. Each one dead because someone had decided profit mattered more than survival. By the time they finished, Sarah felt hollowed out. Martinez pushed a cup of coffee across the table. You okay? No? Fair enough. The agent leaned back in her chair. We're going to fast-track this to trial. Webb's lawyer will try to delay, but with the evidence we have, the prosecutor thinks we can get a conviction within 6 months. What about the other surgeons? We're building cases against each of them, but Webb's the keystone. If we can convict him, the others will likely take plea deals rather than risk trial. Sarah sipped the coffee. It was terrible, but it was hot. And if you can't convict him? Martinez's expression darkened. Then a lot of very dangerous people walk free. A knock on the conference room door interrupted them. Another agent poked his head in, looking worried. Martinez, we have a problem. They followed him to a desk where a laptop was playing a news segment. Sarah recognized the reporter from outside her apartment, the young guy who'd asked about her military service. Obtained exclusive documents suggesting Sarah Bennett was involved in a controversial military operation that resulted in civilian casualties. Sources close to the Pentagon say Bennett was removed from active duty following an incident in 2018 that remains classified to this day. Sarah's blood went cold. The screen cut to interview footage with someone Sarah didn't recognize, a middle-aged man in a cheap suit claiming to be a military analyst. The fact that her service record is almost entirely redacted raises serious questions, the analyst said. What is she hiding? And why should we trust someone with a potentially violent past to provide credible testimony? Martinez muted the video. This is a smear campaign. Webb's legal team is trying to discredit you before trial. They're doing a good job, Sarah said quietly. We can fight this. Issue statements, get our own experts. No. Sarah stood up. They want me to play defense, spend weeks explaining my past instead of focusing on Webb's crimes. I'm not doing that. Then what are you doing? Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her secure email. There was a message waiting from an address she hadn't seen in 7 years. The subject line read, "You need to see this." She clicked the attachment. It was a video file, grainy and shaky like it had been filmed on a handheld device. The footage showed a burning building in what looked like a Middle Eastern city. Smoke filled the screen, and through it, Sarah could see herself, younger, covered in blood and dirt, carrying a small child while gunfire echoed in the background. The timestamp read, August 14th, 2018. Martinez watched over Sarah's shoulder. What is this? The operation they're lying about. Sarah's voice was flat. The one that supposedly made me dangerous. The video continued. Sarah on screen reached a military vehicle and handed the child to another soldier. Then she turned back toward the burning building. Bennett, no! Someone shouted on the video. Command ordered evac. Sarah on screen ignored them and ran back into the fire. The video cut to black. Martinez looked at Sarah. What happened next? I pulled out 3 more civilians, got them to safety, disobeyed direct orders to do it. Sarah closed the laptop. My commanding officer wanted me court-martialed. Someone higher up intervened, got me quietly discharged instead. Classified the whole thing to avoid embarrassment. Why are they bringing this up now? Because Webb's lawyer probably has contacts in military intelligence. They're weaponizing my past to destroy my credibility. Sarah met Martinez's eyes. But that video proves they're lying. I didn't cause civilian casualties. I saved them. Who sent you this? Sarah checked the email address again. It was routed through so many encryption layers that tracing it would be nearly impossible. But she recognized the signature at the bottom. A simple R. Rodriguez. The soldier she'd served with. The one she'd pulled from rubble during a different operation. An old friend, Sarah said. Martinez grabbed the laptop. We need to get this to our media team immediately. If we can show the truth about what happened, it won't matter, Sarah shook her head. Webb's team will claim the video is doctored or taken out of context. They'll find some other angle to attack. That's how this works. So what do we do? Sarah thought about all the patients who died because nobody wanted to fight Marcus Webb. About the families who'd trusted a system that failed them. About the reporters outside her apartment building, ready to destroy her reputation to sell a story. She thought about the teenager on the motorcycle, hours away from being murdered in an operating room. We go on offense, Sarah said. That evening, Sarah did something she'd never done before. She held a press conference. The FBI's media liaison tried to talk her out of it. Martinez warned her it could backfire spectacularly. Even Mitchell, calling from his hospital bed, told her to reconsider. Sarah held it anyway. The press room was packed. Reporters filled every seat, cameras lined the back wall, and the energy in the room was predatory. They smelled blood and controversy, and Sarah was walking straight into it. She stepped up to the podium without notes. My name is Sarah Bennett. I'm a trauma nurse, a former military medic, and the person who helped expose Dr. Marcus Webb's medical fraud operation. Her voice was steady, calm. I'm here to tell you exactly what happened, and then I'm going to answer your questions. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah laid out everything. The incident report she'd filed, the patterns she'd noticed, the patients who'd died under suspicious circumstances. She named names, cited dates, provided evidence that the FBI had already verified. Then she addressed the attacks on her character. You've heard claims about my military service, about classified operations, and alleged misconduct. Here's the truth. I served 8 years as a combat medic in locations I'm still not authorized to discuss. I saved lives. Sometimes I disobeyed orders to do it. And yes, that eventually got me discharged. Sarah pulled out a document and held it up for the cameras. This is my DD-214, my discharge papers. You'll notice it says General under honorable conditions. Not dishonorable. Not other than honorable. I left the service with my integrity intact. She set the document down and looked directly at the cameras. Dr. Webb's legal team wants you to focus on my past because they can't defend his actions. They want you to question my credibility because the evidence against him is overwhelming. They're hoping that if they make me look dangerous or unstable, you'll forget about the 32 patients who died because Webb valued money more than human life. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Bennett, why didn't you come forward sooner if you suspected wrongdoing? Because I'm a nurse, not an investigator. I filed incident reports through proper channels. I documented everything I saw. I trusted the system to work. Sarah's voice hardened. I was wrong to trust it, but I'm not wrong about Webb. Another reporter. Are you being compensated by the FBI for your testimony? No. Do you have any financial stake in the outcome of this case? None. The only thing I want is for the families of Webb's victims to get justice. The questions kept coming. Sarah answered each one directly, refusing to dodge or deflect. When a reporter asked about the video of the 2018 operation, Sarah had them play it on the conference room screen. The room went silent as they watched her run into a burning building to save people. That's who I am, Sarah said quietly. Someone who runs toward danger when others are in trouble. That's what I did in the military. That's what I did at Riverside General. And that's what I'll keep doing, regardless of what Dr. Webb's lawyers say about me. The press conference lasted 90 minutes. By the time Sarah left the podium, her hands were shaking from adrenaline, but her voice had never wavered. Martinez found her in a back hallway, leaning against the wall and trying to steady her breathing. That was either brilliant or insane, the agent said. Possibly both. How bad did I screw up? You didn't. Martinez showed Sarah her phone. Social media was already exploding with clips from the press conference. The video of Sarah running into the burning building had been viewed over 1 million times in the last hour. Public opinion is shifting. People are calling you a hero. Sarah laughed bitterly. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who got tired of watching bad people win. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Bennett? A woman's voice shaking with emotion. My name is Catherine Webb. I'm Marcus Webb's wife. Sarah's entire body tensed. Mrs. Webb? Please, just listen. Catherine's words came out in a rush. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what he was doing. But after they arrested him, I started going through his files at home, his computer, his safe deposit box. You should be talking to the FBI. I am. I called Agent Martinez right before I called you, but there's something you need to know. Catherine's voice dropped to a whisper. Marcus wasn't working alone. There are names in his files, other doctors, hospital administrators, people in positions of authority who helped him cover everything up. Sarah's mind raced. How many people? Dozens, maybe more? And one of them... Catherine paused. One of them works at the federal prosecutor's office. The hallway seemed to tilt sideways. A prosecutor. Someone with access to evidence, witness lists, trial strategies. Someone who could sabotage the entire case from the inside. What's the name? Sarah asked. I don't know. Marcus used codes instead of real names, but Agent Martinez said she'd figure it out. Catherine's voice broke. I'm so sorry. For everything he did. For all the people he hurt. I should have seen it. I should have known. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I lived with him for 15 years. How did I miss this? Sarah thought about all the people at Riverside General who'd worked alongside Webb for years without seeing what he really was. About the nurses who'd dismissed their own concerns. About the administrators who'd chosen not to look too closely. Because he was good at hiding it, Sarah said. That's what makes people like him dangerous. Catherine hung up. Sarah stood in the hallway, processing what she'd just learned. A compromised prosecutor could destroy everything, leak witness information, throw the trial, make sure Webb walked free while his victims' families got nothing. She pulled out her phone to call Martinez, but before she could dial, the emergency lights in the building suddenly cut out. Backup power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in dim red emergency lighting. An alarm started blaring. Sarah's combat instinct screamed at her to move. She started toward the exit, but a hand grabbed her arm from behind. She spun, ready to fight, and found herself facing a man in a federal agent's uniform. Someone she didn't recognize. Ms. Bennett, you need to come with me, he said. There's been a security breach. Where's Martinez? Evacuating the building. I'm assigned to get you to safety. Something about his grip was wrong. too tight, too controlled. Sarah looked at his badge. The ID photo didn't quite match his face. "Let go of me," she said quietly. The man's expression didn't change, but his other hand moved toward his belt, toward a weapon. Sarah reacted on instinct, broke his grip, twisted his arm, and slammed him against the wall hard enough to rattle his teeth. His gun clattered to the floor. "Who sent you?" Sarah demanded. The man just smiled. "You should have stayed hidden, Bennett." Then the lights went out completely, plunging the hallway into absolute darkness. Sarah dropped low as gunfire erupted somewhere in the darkness above her. The fake agent moved fast, but Sarah had spent 8 years training for situations exactly like this. She swept his legs, heard him crash hard against the floor, and was already running before he could recover. The emergency stairwell was 15 feet to her left. Sarah hit the door at full speed, muscle memory guiding her through pitch black. Behind her, footsteps echoed, more than one person now. She took the stairs 3 at a time, descending fast. Her mind calculated exits, cover positions, potential ambush points. The federal building had multiple egress routes, but if they'd cut the power deliberately, they'd also be covering the obvious escape paths. Second floor. Sarah burst through the stairwell door into another dark hallway. Red emergency lights flickered weakly, barely illuminating the corridor. She could hear shouting from somewhere below, agents responding to the breach, trying to secure the building. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it and kept moving. A figure stepped out from a doorway ahead. Sarah recognized the silhouette immediately. Martinez, weapon drawn but lowered. "Bennett, what the hell happened up there?" "Someone tried to grab me. Fake credentials. He knew I'd be in that hallway," Martinez swore. "We've got 3 unauthorized individuals in the building. SWAT's responding, but..." Her radio crackled with frantic voices. "Shots fired on the 4th floor. All agents fall back to secure positions." "They're creating chaos," Sarah said, "trying to extract someone or destroy evidence." "Or get to you." The lights flickered back on for a brief moment, then died again. In that flash, Sarah saw Martinez's face, pale, determined, and frightened in a way agents weren't supposed to show. "Catherine Webb called me right before the breach," Sarah said quickly. "She found files proving Webb had inside help, including someone in the prosecutor's office." Martinez's expression went cold. "That explains how they knew you'd be here. Someone fed them your location, your schedule, everything." She grabbed Sarah's arm. "We need to get you out, now." They moved fast through the building's rear corridors away from the primary response teams. Martinez knew the layout like she'd memorized it, guiding them toward a service exit that opened into an underground parking garage. The door was already ajar when they reached it. Martinez raised her weapon immediately. "That door should be locked." Sarah pressed against the wall, scanning the darkness beyond. The parking garage was silent, but silence could mean anything, empty or occupied, safe or deadly. "We can't stay here," Sarah whispered. "We can't go through there blind." A gunshot rang out behind them, close enough to make both of them flinch. Someone was pushing through the building systematically, clearing rooms. Martinez made the decision. "Go, stay low. My car's in section B7. They slipped through the door into the garage. The space was massive, concrete pillars creating a maze of shadows and potential hiding spots. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, about half of them working. Sarah spotted Martinez's vehicle, a standard Bureau sedan parked near the far wall. They were halfway there when she heard the footsteps. Not running. Walking. Confident and unhurried. A man stepped out from behind a pillar. Mid-40s, expensive suit under a tactical vest, holding a pistol with the casual competence of someone who'd used one many times before. "Agent Martinez," he said pleasantly. "Ms. Bennett, please don't make this difficult." Martinez's weapon didn't waver. "Identify yourself. Does it matter?" The man smiled. "You're both smart enough to know how this works. You've stumbled into something bigger than Marcus Webb, bigger than a few dead patients. The people I represent have invested significant resources into maintaining a very profitable operation. You're threatening that investment." "The people you represent are murderers," Sarah said. "The people I represent are pragmatists. They understand that medicine, like any business, requires difficult decisions. Dr. Webb was simply optimizing outcomes." Martinez took a step forward. "Put the weapon down. You're in a federal building surrounded by armed agents." "Am I?" The man cocked his head, listening. "I hear a lot of confusion, a lot of running around. Not much actual organization. Your colleagues are quite busy dealing with multiple security breaches on 3 different floors. By the time they establish control, we'll be long gone. Sarah's combat instincts were screaming. This man was stalling, keeping them talking while something else happened. She glanced around the garage and spotted it. Another figure moving in the shadows behind Martinez, approaching from the blind side. Down! Sarah shoved Martinez hard to the left, just as the second shooter opened fire. Bullets sparked off concrete where Martinez had been standing. Sarah rolled behind a pillar, her ears ringing from the gunshots echoing in the enclosed space. Martinez returned fire, her shots disciplined and controlled, forcing the first man to take cover. But now they were pinned. 2 shooters, multiple angles, no backup. Sarah's phone was still in her pocket. She pulled it out and hit emergency dial. Direct line to 911 that would bring every cop in Detroit screaming toward this location. Shots fired at the federal building, underground garage, she said quickly. FBI agent under attack, multiple hostiles. The operator's response was drowned out by more gunfire. Martinez was moving, using vehicles for cover, trying to create an angle on the second shooter. Sarah stayed low and scanned for options. There, a fire alarm on the far wall. If she could reach it, the noise and sprinkler system might create enough confusion to shift the odds. She broke from cover and ran. The first shooter tracked her movement and fired, but Sarah was already diving behind another pillar. The alarm was 10 feet away. She could make it. "Bennett, stay down!" Martinez shouted. Sarah ignored her and lunged for the alarm. Her hand hit the lever and immediately the garage filled with deafening noise. Sprinklers activated, raining water down across the entire level. The first shooter cursed and moved to reposition. Martinez took the opportunity and fired 3 rapid shots. One of them hit. The man went down clutching his shoulder, but the second shooter was already on them. He came around a vehicle fast, weapon raised, and Sarah saw Martinez wouldn't be able to turn in time. Sarah grabbed a loose piece of concrete debris from the floor and threw it hard at the shooter's head. It connected with his temple. Not enough to knock him out, but enough to disrupt his aim. His shot went wide, and Martinez spun and fired twice. The shooter dropped. For a moment, the garage was silent except for the alarm and the sound of water hitting concrete. Martinez checked both men quickly. First one's alive, second one's dead. She looked at Sarah. "You okay?" "Yeah." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The cavalry was coming, but the damage was already done. Someone had sent a hit team into a federal building to either kill Sarah or scare her into silence. And they'd done it knowing exactly when and where she'd be. Martinez was already on her radio, calling for medical and backup. Sarah leaned against a pillar, letting the adrenaline bleed off, and tried to process what had just happened. The fake agent upstairs. The coordinated breach. The 2 shooters waiting in the garage. This wasn't improvised. It was planned, precise, and executed by people with serious resources. Webb's operation was bigger than anyone had realized. The FBI building became a fortress within an hour. SWAT teams cleared every floor. Agents locked down all entry points. The 2 shooters in the garage were taken into custody, one to the hospital under guard, the other to the morgue. The fake agent from upstairs had vanished during the chaos, probably slipped out during the initial confusion. Sarah sat in a secure conference room while agents processed the scene. Someone had brought her a towel for the sprinkler water and a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but inside she felt the familiar hollow aftermath of violence. Martinez entered with Agent Reeves and a woman Sarah didn't recognize, older, gray hair, wearing a suit that screamed senior management. "Miss Bennett, this is Assistant Director Catherine Morrison," Martinez said. "She's taking over the investigation." Morrison sat down across from Sarah with the careful deliberation of someone used to delivering bad news. 3 hours ago, someone accessed our case files on Marcus Webb, Morrison said without preamble. They copied witness lists, evidence logs, and trial preparation documents. We believe it was the same insider Catherine Webb mentioned. Have you identified them? Not yet, but we've narrowed it to 4 people in the prosecutor's office who had the necessary access. Morrison's expression was grim. Until we know who the mole is, every aspect of this case is compromised, including your safety. Sarah absorbed that. What are you saying? I'm saying that someone with extensive resources and 0 moral boundaries wants you dead. They tried once tonight. They'll try again. Morrison pulled out a folder. I'm recommending you enter witness protection immediately. New identity, new location, full security detail until trial. No. Ms. Bennett, if I disappear, Webb's lawyers will claim I fled because my testimony was fabricated. They'll say I couldn't handle scrutiny. The case falls apart. Morrison leaned forward. If you don't disappear, you might not survive long enough to testify. Then protect me here. Put agents on me 24/7, but I'm not running. The room went silent. Martinez looked uncomfortable. Reeves studied Sarah like she was trying to figure out whether this was courage or stupidity. Morrison finally nodded. All right, but we do this my way. You don't go anywhere without a security detail. You don't talk to anyone we haven't vetted, and if the threat level increases, you go into protection whether you like it or not. Understood? Understood. Morrison stood. Get some rest. We've set up a secure room on the 3rd floor. 2 agents will be posted outside at all times. Sarah nodded and watched Morrison leave. The moment the door closed, Martinez sat down heavily in the vacated chair. You sure about this? The agent asked quietly. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Why? You could walk away right now, change your name, move to Alaska, let us handle Webb. Sarah thought about Thomas Harrison, dead from complications that should never have happened. About Danny Carlson, hours away from being murdered in an operating room. About 32 families who'd never gotten answers because people like her had stayed quiet. Because someone has to give a damn, Sarah said. Martinez studied her for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you're not doing this for the victims. You're doing this for yourself. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've spent 3 years punishing yourself for whatever happened in 2018, hiding in a quiet nursing job, pretending you're just another civilian, trying to convince yourself you don't miss the action. Martinez's voice wasn't cruel, just observational. This case is giving you permission to be who you really are again, and part of you is terrified that if you lose it, you'll have to go back to being nobody. Sarah's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Martinez stood up. Get some sleep, Bennett. Tomorrow's going to be worse than today. She left Sarah alone in the conference room with a truth that hurt more than the gunfight had. Sarah tried to sleep in the secure room, but gave up after an hour of staring at the ceiling. Her phone had 47 new messages, most from reporters, a few from people claiming to be victims' family members, one from Patricia asking if she was okay. One message stood out. Unknown number, sent during the firefight. They won't stop. You know that, right? R. Rodriguez. Always watching, always one step ahead. Sarah typed back, neither will I. The response came immediately. Good, because we're not done yet. Sarah frowned at the screen. What did that mean? Before she could ask, her phone rang. Mitchell. You were in a shootout, he said without greeting. It's all over the news. They're saying 2 people are dead. 1, the other's in custody. Are you hurt? No. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Sarah, maybe you should listen to the FBI. Go into protection. This is getting out of control. It was already out of control. We just didn't know it yet. That's not... Mitchell broke off, coughing. When he spoke again, his voice was weaker. I'm the one who dragged you into this. If something happens to you because I showed up bleeding at your hospital, nothing's going to happen to me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I'm better trained than the people coming after me, and I'm a lot more motivated. Sarah softened her tone. Get some rest, Mitchell. You sound like death. Feel like it too. He paused. The doctors say I can give a deposition from bed in about 48 hours. That'll help the case, right? It'll help. Good. Because if I got shot for nothing, I'm going to be really annoyed. Sarah almost smiled. I'll keep you posted. She hung up and checked the time. 3 a.m. The city outside was quiet, but Sarah knew the calm was temporary. Morning would bring another wave of media coverage, more pressure from Webb's legal team, more danger from whoever wanted her silenced. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video file from Rodriguez. No message, just the attachment. Sarah downloaded it and pressed play. The footage was security camera video from inside Riverside General Hospital, dated 2 days before Webb's arrest. It showed Webb in what looked like an administrator's office, talking to 2 men Sarah didn't recognize. The audio was muffled but audible. Can't contain this much longer. Webb was saying. The nurse has been documenting everything. If someone actually reads her reports, then we accelerate the timeline, one of the men interrupted. Clean up loose ends, starting with Bennett. Sarah's blood ran cold. Webb shook his head. She's just a nurse. Fire her, and she goes away. She's a former military operative with documented connections to federal agencies. She doesn't just go away. The man pulled out a folder. We've already identified assets willing to handle the situation. It'll look like a random assault. Happens all the time in Detroit. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about protecting a billion-dollar network. Your moral squeamishness is noted and ignored. Webb looked sick but didn't argue. The video ended. Sarah sat in the darkness, processing what she'd just seen. Webb had known there were plans to kill her. He'd objected weakly, but ultimately went along with it. And somewhere in Detroit, people were still following those orders. She forwarded the video to Martinez with a single word. Evidence. The response came back within minutes. Where did you get this? Sarah typed, Does it matter? Yes. Chain of custody? Admissibility? We need to know the source. Anonymous tip. That's all I can give you. Martinez didn't respond for several minutes. Then, this changes everything. Get some actual sleep. We're moving at dawn. Sarah put the phone down and closed her eyes. This time, exhaustion won over adrenaline, and she fell into restless sleep filled with burning buildings and gunfire. She woke 4 hours later to someone knocking urgently on the door. Agent Reeves entered, looking tense. We've got a problem. Morrison needs you downstairs immediately. Sarah followed her to the main operations center, where at least 20 agents were gathered around monitors displaying news coverage. Every channel showed the same thing. Marcus Webb, released on bail, standing on the courthouse steps surrounded by lawyers and cameras. Complete vindication, Webb was saying. These charges are the result of a vindictive campaign by a disturbed individual with a documented history of violent behavior and insubordination. Sarah Bennett is not a whistleblower. She's a disgraced former soldier with an axe to grind. The reporter pressed, But Dr. Webb, what about the evidence? The FBI has documented irregularities. The FBI has documented nothing except the fantasies of an unstable woman seeking revenge for being terminated. Webb's expression was perfectly calibrated sympathy. I feel sorry for Ms. Bennett. Clearly she needs psychiatric help, but I will not allow her delusions to destroy my career or this hospital's reputation. Sarah watched her own face appear on screen, footage from the press conference, edited to make her look aggressive and unstable. They'd cut out context, rearranged her words, created a narrative that painted her as dangerous and unhinged. Morrison muted the coverage. He posted bail 2 hours ago, $5 million, paid in cash by an anonymous benefactor. Let me guess, Sarah said. You can't trace it. Shell companies and offshore accounts. Whoever bankrolled this has serious financial resources. Morrison turned to face Sarah. Webb's legal team filed a motion this morning to have your testimony excluded from trial. They're claiming you're mentally unfit to testify due to PTSD from your military service. Sarah felt rage building in her chest. That's bullshit. Of course it's bullshit, but it's effective bullshit. They're going to demand you undergo psychiatric evaluation before you can testify. That delays the trial by months, maybe longer, and gives them more time to make me disappear. Morrison nodded grimly. We're filing motions to counter, but Webb's lawyers are well-funded and very good. This is going to be a fight. Martinez spoke up from across the room. There's something else. The shooter we captured last night, he's refusing to talk. Won't identify who hired him, won't cooperate with any plea deal. His lawyer showed up an hour ago, same firm representing Webb. The pieces clicked together in Sarah's mind. Webb wasn't just a surgeon. He was the visible face of something much larger, a network of people who'd built an empire on medical fraud and were willing to kill to protect it. And they had resources Sarah hadn't anticipated. What about the video Rodriguez sent me? Sarah asked. Webb literally discussing plans to have me killed. Inadmissible without knowing the source, Morrison said. And even if we could get it admitted, his lawyers would claim it was taken out of context or digitally manipulated. We need more. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another message from Rodriguez. Check the news, Detroit Metro section. She pulled up a local news site and found the story immediately. Fire at Riverside General claims patient records. The article described an overnight fire in the hospital's record storage facility. Sprinkler systems had activated, but not before significant damage to archived patient files. Investigators suspected electrical malfunction. "They're destroying evidence," Sarah said, showing the others. Martinez swore. "We subpoenaed those records yesterday. They're eliminating anything that could connect Webb to the deaths." "Not everything," Sarah thought fast. "I kept copies, digital backups of every incident report I filed, every patient record I thought looked suspicious, cloud storage with multiple redundancies." Morrison's eyes sharpened. "Can you access it now?" "Give me 10 minutes." Sarah pulled out her laptop and logged into her secure storage account. Everything was still there. 3 years of documentation, organized by date and patient name. She started downloading files, preparing to hand them over to the FBI. Then her screen went black. "What the—" Sarah tried rebooting. Nothing. The laptop was completely dead. Martinez leaned over. "What happened?" "I don't know. It just shut down." Reeves grabbed the laptop and examined it. "Someone triggered a remote wipe. Your entire hard drive's been erased." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "That's impossible. I had multiple security protocols, which means someone very good got past them." Reeves set the laptop down. "The cloud storage?" Sarah tried accessing it from her phone. The account was gone, completely deleted, like it had never existed. Morrison's face was pale. They knew exactly where to hit. "Someone's been monitoring your digital activity." "The mole," Martinez said. "They've been tracking everything Sarah does. Every file she accesses, every backup she creates. And they just destroyed all of it." Sarah stood there numb, watching 3 years of evidence evaporate. Every incident report, every patient record, every piece of documentation that could have proven Webb's guilt, gone. "We still have your testimony," Morrison said, but her voice lacked conviction. "And Mitchell's. That might be enough." "It won't be." Sarah's voice was flat. "Not without corroboration, not against lawyers this good. Webb walks." The operations center had gone completely silent. Every agent in the room understood what this meant. They'd lost. The investigation was compromised, the evidence destroyed, the witnesses isolated and vulnerable. Webb had won. Sarah's phone rang one more time. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Hello, Ms. Bennett." The voice was male, cultured, with an accent she couldn't place. "I hope you're beginning to understand the situation. Dr. Webb is a valuable asset to people who don't accept failure. Your crusade ends now." "Who is this?" "Someone giving you a final opportunity to walk away. Drop your testimony, recant your accusations, disappear quietly, do this, and you live." "And if I don't?" "Then we escalate. Your friend Officer Mitchell is recovering nicely, I understand. Shame if something were to happen during his rehabilitation. And that young doctor, Kim, wasn't it? The resident you protected. She has a bright future ahead of her. Would be terrible if—" Sarah's grip on the phone tightened. "You threaten them, and I will find you." The man laughed softly. "No, Ms. Bennett, you won't. Because you're one person with no evidence, no allies, and no hope of winning this fight. Be smart. Walk away." He hung up. Sarah stood there, shaking with rage, surrounded by federal agents who all looked like they'd just watched someone die. Then her phone buzzed one last time. Another message from Rodriguez. "St. Vincent Cemetery, Section 9, now, come alone." Sarah looked at the message, then at Morrison and Martinez, at the agents who'd tried to protect her, at the system that had failed to stop Webb. She made her decision. "I need air," Sarah said, heading toward the exit. Martinez stepped in front of her. "You're not going anywhere without security." "Then they can follow me. But I'm leaving." "Sarah, they destroyed everything. The evidence, the backups, all of it. What exactly am I supposed to do? Sit here and wait for them to kill everyone I care about?" Morrison's voice was firm. "We can still protect you." "You couldn't even protect your own files," Sarah pushed past Martinez. "I'm done letting other people fight this battle." She walked out of the federal building into cold Detroit morning, 2 agents trailing behind her, and pulled up directions to St. Vincent Cemetery. Whatever Rodriguez wanted to show her, it was time to see it. The cemetery was old, sprawling across several acres of weathered headstones and crumbling monuments. Sarah parked near the entrance and walked into Section 9, leaving her FBI shadows scrambling to follow. She found Rodriguez standing near a fresh grave, looking exactly like she remembered, compact, muscular, with the same alert eyes that never stopped scanning for threats. "You're harder to kill than I expected," Rodriguez said by way of greeting. "You've been watching. Always." Rodriguez gestured to the grave. "Thomas Harrison. Remember him?" Sarah looked at the headstone, the accountant who'd died from complications, one of Webb's victims. "His daughter reached out to me last week," Rodriguez continued. "Wanted to know if the rumors were true, if her father's death was really just bad luck or something worse." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That her father was murdered for money." Rodriguez pulled out a folder. "And then I gave her these." Sarah opened the folder. Inside were documents, financial records, emails, encrypted communications between Webb and multiple other surgeons across the country. Names, dates, amounts, a complete map of the entire operation. "Where did you get this?" "Been tracking Webb for 2 years, since before Mitchell's investigation even started." Rodriguez's expression was hard. "I lost someone to this network. A friend who went in for routine surgery and never came out. Started digging, found patterns, and realized this went way deeper than one corrupt surgeon." Sarah flipped through the documents. Everything was here. Everything the FBI had lost when Sarah's backups were wiped. And more. Evidence of coordination between hospitals, insurance fraud at a massive scale, kickbacks to administrators who looked the other way. "Why didn't you give this to the FBI?" "Because the FBI has a mole. I give them evidence, it disappears." Rodriguez met Sarah's eyes. "But you're different. You're not part of the system. You're the one person Webb can't buy or threaten into silence." "They just destroyed all my documentation, threatened to kill Mitchell and Kim if I don't back off. I'm alone and exposed." "No." Rodriguez handed Sarah a flash drive. "You're armed. Everything in that folder, plus more. Hidden so deep, their mole will never find it. Use it. Burn them all down." Sarah took the drive, feeling its weight in her palm. This was it. The evidence that could end Webb and everyone working with him. "The FBI agents following me will take this the moment they see it," Sarah said. "Then don't let them see it." Rodriguez smiled slightly. "You were always good at improvising." Footsteps approached from behind. The FBI security detail, finally catching up. Rodriguez was already moving, disappearing between headstones with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent a career avoiding detection. "Wait," Sarah called. "Why are you doing this?" Rodriguez paused and looked back. "Because some fights are worth finishing, even when everyone says you should quit." Then Rodriguez was gone. The FBI agents reached Sarah, both of them breathing hard from running. "Who was that?" one demanded. "Nobody, just visiting a grave." They didn't believe her, but they couldn't prove otherwise. Sarah walked back to her car, the flash drive hidden in her pocket, and felt something shift inside her. Webb thought he'd won, thought he'd destroyed her credibility and her evidence, thought he could threaten people she cared about and make her disappear. He'd made a critical mistake. He'd assumed Sarah Bennett would fight fair. She got into her car and pulled out her phone. Time to stop playing defense. Time to burn everything down. Sarah drove straight to Riverside General Hospital. The building looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more ordinary. Just another hospital where people came seeking help and sometimes found death instead. The FBI agents followed her into the parking lot, clearly unhappy but unable to stop her. Sarah walked through the main entrance and headed straight for administration. Patricia was at her desk, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. "Sarah? What are you doing here? The FBI said you were in protective... I need access to Webb's office." Patricia blinked. "I can't authorize that. The police sealed it as part of the investigation. Then unsealed it. I know Webb kept personal files here, physical documents he didn't trust to digital storage. Even if that's true, I can't just..." Sarah leaned across the desk. "Patricia, they're going to make this disappear. All of it. Webb posted bail. His lawyers are dismantling the case piece by piece. In a month, he'll be back performing surgeries and killing people. Unless we stop him now." Patricia's hands trembled. "What do you want me to do?" "Give me 10 minutes in his office. That's all I need." For a long moment, Patricia just stared at her. Then she pulled out a keycard. "I didn't give you this. I don't know how you got access. Understood?" Sarah took the card. "Understood." Webb's office was on the 4th floor, behind a door marked with police tape. Sarah used the card and slipped inside, closing the door before the FBI agents could follow. The office was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive furniture, medical degrees on the wall, a view of Detroit that probably cost extra. But Sarah wasn't interested in the obvious. She went straight for the desk and started searching. Bottom drawer, locked. Sarah used a letter opener to jimmy it open. Inside were patient files, not official hospital records, but personal notes Webb had kept on specific cases. Sarah flipped through them quickly. Each file contained details about patients who died or suffered complications. But these notes weren't about medical outcomes. They were about financial results, profit margins, insurance payouts. This was the ledger, the proof that Webb had viewed patients as revenue streams rather than human beings. Sarah photographed every page with her phone, uploading them to a new encrypted account Rodriguez had set up for her. Then she found something else at the back of the drawer. A burner phone. Sarah powered it on and scrolled through the messages. Encrypted communications between Webb and multiple unknown contacts. Coordination of surgical schedules, discussions of high-value targets, patients with excellent insurance who could be exploited for maximum profit. And at the very end, a message sent 2 days ago. Bennett, situation escalating. Recommend immediate action. The response? Approved. Clean sweep authorized. Clean sweep. Military terminology for eliminating all witnesses. Sarah was photographing the messages when the office door opened. Dr. Kim stood there, frozen in shock. Sarah, what are you? Kim saw the open drawer, the phone, the files spread across the desk. You're not supposed to be here. Neither are you. Kim closed the door quickly. I came to get my things. They suspended me pending investigation, said I might have been complicit in Webb's. She stopped, eyes widening. That's his phone, his real one. Yeah. The police didn't find it? Webb probably hid it before they searched, didn't expect anyone to come back looking. Kim approached the desk slowly, staring at the files. These are patient records, people who died. Her voice cracked. I assisted on some of these surgeries. I watched them die and thought it was just bad luck or complications. But Webb was killing them on purpose, for money. Kim sat down heavily. Oh my God, I helped him. I didn't know, but You didn't know because he was good at hiding it. That's not your fault. Tell that to their families. Kim looked at Sarah. What are you going to do? Sarah finished photographing the last message and put the phone in her pocket. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what Webb did, and I need your help. How? The FBI's case is falling apart. Their evidence is compromised. But you're a witness too. You saw the surgeries. You can testify about Webb's behavior, his decisions, the outcomes. Kim shook her head. His lawyers will destroy me. They'll say I'm just trying to save my own career by blaming him. Probably, but they can't destroy both of us. Two independent witnesses, both willing to testify, both with nothing to gain by lying. Sarah met Kim's eyes. I need you to be brave, just for a little while. Kim was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, what do I do? Before Sarah could answer, her phone rang. Martinez. Where the hell are you? The agent demanded. My team says you went into the hospital and haven't come out. I'm getting evidence. You're contaminating a crime scene and putting yourself in danger. Get out of there now. In a minute. Sarah? Sarah hung up and looked at Kim. We need to leave. Now. They walked out of Webb's office together and headed toward the elevator. The FBI agents were waiting in the lobby, looking furious but professional. One of them stepped forward. Ms. Bennett, you need to come with us. Assistant Director Morrison wants... Tell Morrison I found Webb's burner phone with messages proving conspiracy to commit murder. I'm bringing it to her personally. The agent's expression shifted from angry to shocked. You found what? Evidence. Real, admissible chain of custody evidence that will put Webb and his partners away for life. Sarah pulled out the phone. Now, either arrest me for trespassing or get out of my way. The agents looked at each other, clearly uncertain. Then Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Federal prosecutor found dead in apparent suicide. Sarah opened the article. The prosecutor's name was listed, Margaret Ashford, 15-year veteran of the U.S. Attorney's Office. The mole. She'd killed herself rather than face arrest. Sarah showed the phone to Martinez, who just arrived at the hospital. The agent read the headline and went pale. That's our leak. She had access to everything. And now she's dead. Convenient.
Or terrified. Martinez looked around the lobby, suddenly paranoid. If Ashford was working for Webb's network and they killed her to tie up loose ends, then everyone connected to this case is in danger, Sarah finished. Martinez grabbed her radio. This is Agent Martinez. I need immediate security details on Officer Mitchell, Dr. Kim Patterson, and all witnesses connected to the Webb investigation. Nobody moves without protection.
Sarah felt the walls closing in. Ashford dead. Evidence destroyed. Witnesses threatened. Webb's network was systematically eliminating anything that could hurt them. But they'd made one mistake. They'd left Webb's personal phone in his office, probably assuming he'd retrieve it himself before anyone thought to look. Sarah held up the burner. This has everything: messages to the shooters, coordination with other surgeons, financial transfers. It's the smoking gun. Martinez took the phone carefully. If this is real, if we can authenticate it, we can end this, Sarah said. For the first time in days, Martinez smiled. Then let's end it. They were walking toward the exit when every window in the hospital lobby exploded inward. Glass rained down across the lobby floor as the concussion from the explosion threw Sarah sideways into a reception desk. Her ears rang, her vision blurred, but muscle memory kicked in before conscious thought. Stay low, assess damage, identify threats. Martinez was already moving, weapon drawn, shouting orders Sarah couldn't hear over the ringing in her skull. The FBI agents formed a protective barrier around Sarah and Kim, scanning for secondary attacks. Sarah's hearing came back in stages. First the screams, then the sirens, then Martinez's voice cutting through the chaos. Vehicle-borne explosive, parking lot. No casualties reported yet, but we need to evacuate now. Sarah pulled herself upright, checking her pockets. The burner phone was still there, intact. She grabbed Kim's arm. The young doctor was sitting on the floor in shock, blood trickling from a cut above her eyebrow. "Can you walk?" Sarah asked. Kim nodded mutely. They moved toward the rear exit while hospital security rushed to help injured staff and visitors. The explosion had been precise, close enough to terrify, far enough to avoid mass casualties. A message, not an execution. They know we have the phone, Sarah realized. They're trying to destroy it before we can use it. Martinez shepherded them through a service corridor and out into an alley where 2 FBI vehicles were already screaming toward their location. They piled into the first one, and the driver accelerated before the doors were fully closed. "Where's the phone?" Martinez demanded. Sarah pulled it from her pocket and handed it over. Martinez immediately passed it to Reeves in the passenger seat. "Get this to the tech lab. Full forensic analysis. I want every message recovered, every contact identified, everything." Martinez's voice was tight with controlled fury. "And somebody find out how the hell they knew we'd be at that hospital." Sarah leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. Her body ached from the impact. Her ears still rang faintly, but she was alive. Kim was alive. The phone had survived. But somewhere in Detroit, people with unlimited resources were watching their every move and staying one step ahead. Her phone buzzed. "Rodriguez." "You're getting sloppy. That explosion should have killed you." Sarah typed back. "Thanks for the concern. I'm serious. They're escalating because they're scared. You're close to something they can't let you find." "The phone?" "Bigger. The phone proves conspiracy. But there's something else, something that connects everyone in the network to a single source." Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "What source?" "Still digging, but whatever it is, it's worth killing a federal prosecutor to protect. Watch your back." The message thread went dark. Sarah looked at Martinez. "Rodriguez says there's something bigger than the phone, something connecting the entire network." "Your mysterious source again." Martinez didn't hide her skepticism. "Any chance this Rodriguez will actually come forward and testify?" "No." "Then for legal purposes, the information is useless." "It's kept me alive so far." Martinez didn't have an answer for that. They arrived at the FBI field office to find it transformed into a fortress. Barricades blocked the street. Armed agents patrolled every entrance. Assistant Director Morrison was waiting in the operations center, her expression carved from stone. "Status," she said immediately. Martinez handed over the burner phone in an evidence bag. Bennett found this in Webb's office. Messages indicating coordination of attacks, discussion of witnesses, and what appears to be approval for a clean sweep operation. Morrison examined the phone through the plastic. Chain of custody? Compromised. Bennett entered the office without authorization and removed evidence from an active crime scene. So it's inadmissible. Not necessarily, Reeves interjected. If we can authenticate the messages independently and connect them to other evidence, a judge might allow it under inevitable discovery doctrine. Morrison set the phone down. That's a big if. Webb's lawyers will argue contamination, illegal search, fruit of the poisonous tree. They'll tie this up in motions for months. Then we make those months count, Sarah said. Everyone turned to look at her. The messages prove Webb was coordinating with someone, multiple someones. You trace the contacts, you find the network, you find the person funding all of this. Morrison studied Sarah like she was a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. You're suggesting we use inadmissible evidence as an investigative roadmap. I'm suggesting you do your job before more people die. The room went cold. Several agents shifted uncomfortably. Morrison's expression didn't change. Ms. Bennett, I understand you're frustrated, but undermining this investigation with illegal evidence gathering helps no one. Neither does playing by rules the other side ignores. That's exactly what separates us from them. Sarah almost laughed. You think Marcus Webb cares about rules? He murdered 32 people. He tried to kill a federal officer. He sent a hit team into this building. And you're worried about evidence protocols? Yes, Morrison said firmly, because without proper protocols, we have nothing, no conviction, no justice, just chaos. Sarah looked around the operations center at the agents who wouldn't meet her eyes, at Martinez, who looked sympathetic but conflicted, at the systems and procedures that moved slower than the people trying to destroy them. She made a decision. I'm done waiting for the system to work, Sarah said quietly. You want to follow procedures, that's fine, but I'm going to stop Webb my way. Morrison stepped closer. If you interfere with this investigation, you'll what? Arrest me? Webb's already destroyed my career. His people already tried to kill me twice. What exactly do I have to lose? Your freedom, your life, your integrity. Sarah met the assistant director's eyes. My integrity is why I'm still fighting. What's your excuse for moving so slow? She walked out before Morrison could respond. Martinez caught up with her in the hallway. Sarah, wait. I'm not changing my mind. I know, but you can't do this alone. Whatever you're planning, I'm planning to finish what Mitchell started, with or without FBI approval. Martinez grabbed her arm. Then let me help. Off the books. No official sanction. Just two people who give a damn about stopping bad guys. Sarah studied the agent's face, looking for deception or manipulation. She saw only exhaustion and genuine anger. You'd risk your career for this? I've watched Webb's lawyers dismantle our case piece by piece for 3 days. Watched witnesses get threatened and evidence disappear. Watched that smug bastard walk out on bail knowing he's going to get away with murder. Martinez's jaw tightened. So yeah, I'd risk it. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Martinez the last message from Rodriguez. My source says there's something bigger, a central connection that links everyone in the network. Any idea what? No, but I know how to find out. Martinez waited. Webb's wife, Catherine, gave you files from his home office, right? Names, codes, financial records. Most of it's encrypted. Our tech team is working on it, but it'll take weeks. Then we don't use your tech team. Sarah pulled up a number on her phone. We use someone faster. She dialed. The call connected immediately. Didn't expect to hear from you again, Rodriguez said. I need your help. Real help. Not just mysterious warnings and surveillance footage. What kind of help? The kind that involves breaking encryption on financial records the FBI can't crack. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. You're asking me to commit multiple federal crimes. I'm asking you to help me stop people who are actually committing federal crimes. What's in it for me? Sarah thought about that question, about what drove someone to spend 2 years tracking a medical fraud network in secret, about losing a friend to people who viewed patients as profit margins. The same thing that's in it for me, Sarah said, making sure they pay. Rodriguez laughed softly. All right, send me the files, but Bennett? If this goes wrong, I was never involved. Understood. Sarah hung up and looked at Martinez. Can you get me copies of the encrypted files without Morrison knowing? Probably, but if she finds out, then we both get fired. Better than letting Webb walk free. Martinez pulled out her phone and started typing. I'll send them to a secure drop. Your source can access them remotely. While Martinez worked, Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID showed Riverside General Hospital. She answered cautiously. Bennett? Sarah, it's Patricia. The nursing director's voice was shaking. You need to see the news. Right now. Sarah pulled up a news site on her phone and felt her stomach drop. The headline read, Riverside General Nurse Arrested for Evidence Tampering. Below that was her own face, a mugshot-style photo that must have come from hospital records. The article claimed Detroit police had issued a warrant for her arrest based on allegations that she'd broken into Dr. Webb's office and stolen confidential patient files. They're saying you destroyed evidence that would have exonerated Webb, Patricia continued. His lawyers are claiming you planted the burner phone to frame him. Sarah scrolled through the article. Webb's legal team had moved fast, filed a complaint with the police, gotten a friendly judge to issue a warrant, and leaked everything to the media before the FBI could respond. They're trying to arrest me before I can testify, Sarah said. It's working. There are police cars outside the hospital asking about you, and Sarah, Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper. They're talking about charging you with conspiracy to commit fraud. They're saying you and Webb were working together, and you turned on him when the FBI started investigating. The walls were closing in from every direction. Webb's lawyers were rewriting the narrative, transforming Sarah from whistleblower to criminal. Even if the charges didn't stick, the accusation alone would destroy her credibility. Martinez had been listening. Morrison needs to know about this. Morrison will tell me to turn myself in and trust the process. How did that work out for Ashford? Ashford was dirty. Ashford was a federal prosecutor, and they still got to her. What chance do I have in a Detroit jail cell? Martinez didn't have an answer. Sarah's phone buzzed with another message. Unknown number. You have 12 hours. After that, we stop being subtle. No signature, no context, just a deadline. Sarah showed it to Martinez. They're running out of patience. Who sent that? Probably the same people who blew up the hospital parking lot. Probably the same people who killed Ashford. Sarah pocketed her phone. I'm not waiting 12 hours to find out what not subtle means. What are you going to do? Something stupid and dangerous that will either end this or get me killed. Before Martinez could argue, Sarah walked toward the exit. 2 FBI agents moved to intercept her, but Martinez waved them off. Let her go, the agent said quietly. But the Detroit PD warrant isn't worth the paper it's printed on, and we all know it. If she gets arrested, she's dead within 24 hours. So we let her run and hope she survives long enough to finish what she started. Sarah heard all of this from the stairwell. She almost turned back, almost thanked Martinez for the trust and the support. Instead, she kept moving because words didn't matter anymore. Only actions, only results. She made it to the parking garage and was halfway to her car when a figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Rodriguez, in the flesh. You're predictable, Rodriguez said. Thought process goes, FBI too slow, police compromised. Only option is direct action. Am I close? Pretty close. Good. Because you're going to need backup for what comes next. Rodriguez pulled out a tablet and brought up a map of Detroit. I cracked the encryption on Catherine Webb's files, found the connection. Sarah moved closer to look at the screen. The map showed multiple locations marked with red dots, hospitals, medical centers, insurance offices. Lines connected them in a complex web that spread across 4 states. What am I looking at? A network. 37 surgeons, 12 hospital administrators, 5 insurance executives, and 2 medical supply companies, all coordinating to maximize profits through unnecessary procedures, fraudulent billing, and the occasional convenient death when someone got too expensive to keep alive. Sarah traced the lines with her finger. They all led back to a single point in the center of the map. What's that? Apex Medical Holdings, a private equity firm that owns stakes in 17 hospitals, including Riverside General. They purchased struggling medical centers, installed their own administrators, and systematically turned them into profit machines. By killing patients. By optimizing resource allocation. Rodriguez's voice was bitter. That's how they describe it in the financial reports. Reducing unnecessary treatments, streamlining care pathways, maximizing return on investment.
Sarah stared at the map. This was bigger than Webb, bigger than a few corrupt surgeons. This was institutional murder disguised as business strategy. Who runs Apex Medical Holdings? Rodriguez pulled up another file. That's where it gets interesting. The company's registered in Delaware, owned by a series of shell corporations that trace back to a trust in the Cayman Islands. Standard wealth protection strategies that make it nearly impossible to identify the actual owners.
Nearly impossible isn't the same as impossible. No, it's not, Rodriguez smiled. I found a paper trail buried in corporate filings from 2015, back before they got sophisticated about hiding ownership. Want to guess whose name shows up as a founding board member? Sarah already knew. Marcus Webb. Close. Catherine Webb. Before she married Marcus, she was Catherine Morrison, daughter of William Morrison, CEO of the largest medical insurance provider in the Midwest. The pieces clicked into place. Catherine hadn't been an innocent spouse who discovered her husband's crimes. She'd been part of the operation from the beginning. Her call to Sarah, her offer to provide evidence, it was all theater. She played us, Sarah said, perfectly. Fed the FBI just enough information to make them think they had the full picture while hiding the real scope. Made herself look like a victim when she was actually one of the architects. Sarah pulled out her phone and called Martinez. Don't trust anything Catherine Webb tells you. She's not a witness. She's part of it. What are you talking about? Catherine Webb is a founding member of Apex Medical Holdings. The entire network runs through that company. She didn't discover evidence of Webb's crimes. She helped create the system that made them possible. Martinez swore. We've been using her statements to build our case. If she's lying, then the case falls apart, which is exactly what she wants. Sarah looked at Rodriguez. We need to expose Apex before Catherine can disappear. Already on it. I've sent copies of everything to 3 different journalists, 2 congressional oversight committees, and a watchdog group that specializes in medical fraud. By tomorrow morning, Apex Medical Holdings will be all over the news. That's not enough. The people behind Apex have lawyers and money and influence. They'll survive a news cycle. Then what do you suggest? Sarah thought about the message on her phone. 12 hours. After that, we stop being subtle. We force them into the open. Make them choose between protecting their network and protecting themselves. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. How? By going public with everything. Not through journalists or congressional committees, directly to the people who matter most. The victims' families. Sarah nodded. Webb's lawyers are painting me as a criminal. Catherine's positioning herself as an innocent victim. The FBI's bogged down in procedure and politics. But none of that matters if the families know the truth. You're talking about a media campaign. I'm talking about calling a press conference and laying out every single piece of evidence we have. Names, dates, financial connections, everything. Let the public see exactly how this network operates. Rodriguez looked skeptical. You'll be arrested the moment you show your face. Detroit PD has an active warrant. Then I'll do it from somewhere they can't reach me. Like where? Sarah smiled grimly. The one place in Detroit where the police can't arrest me without causing an incident. Martinez's voice crackled from the phone Sarah was still holding. Please tell me you're not planning what I think you're planning. Depends on what you think I'm planning. You're going to do the press conference from inside the federal building, our jurisdiction, not Detroit PD's. They'd need a federal warrant to touch you, and Morrison will never approve one. See, you do understand me. Sarah, this is insane. Morrison will never allow it. Then I won't ask permission. Sarah looked at Rodriguez. Can you get the evidence ready to present? Full documentation? Financial records? Everything? Already done. I've been preparing for this for 2 years. Good. Meet me at the federal building in 1 hour. Bring everything. Sarah hung up and turned toward her car. Rodriguez called after her. You know this is probably going to get you killed, right? Probably, but at least I'll take them down with me. Sarah drove back to the federal building through late afternoon traffic, her mind running through contingencies and backup plans. The warrant from Detroit PD was a problem, but Martinez was right. Federal jurisdiction trumped local law enforcement. As long as Sarah stayed inside the FBI building, she was untouchable. For now. She parked in the underground garage and took the elevator straight to Morrison's office. The assistant director was on the phone but gestured for Sarah to wait.
I don't care what Judge Harrison says, Morrison was saying. That warrant is political theater, and we both know it. Tell the DA if he wants to arrest a federal witness, he can file proper motions through proper channels. She hung up and looked at Sarah with an expression that mixed exasperation and grudging respect. You have a remarkable talent for making my job difficult. Sorry. No, you're not. Morrison leaned back in her chair. What do you want, Ms. Bennett?
Permission to hold a press conference from the federal building. Tonight. Full disclosure of everything we know about Marcus Webb, Apex Medical Holdings, and the Medical Fraud Network. Morrison's laugh was sharp and humorless. Absolutely not. Why not? Because it would compromise an active investigation, violate numerous FBI protocols, potentially constitute witness tampering, and almost certainly get you killed within 48 hours. Morrison counted off on her fingers. Should I continue? Webb's lawyers are destroying the case. Catherine Webb is playing you. The network is eliminating witnesses and evidence faster than you can protect them. If we don't go public now, everyone walks free. If we go public now, every piece of evidence becomes questionable, and every testimony gets tainted by media coverage. Defense lawyers dream of situations like this. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Morrison the message. 12 hours. That's how long whoever runs this network is giving me to disappear. After that, they stop being subtle. Morrison read the message, her expression darkening. All the more reason to put you in protective custody. I'm done hiding. I'm done waiting for the system to work while people die. Sarah leaned forward. You want this network stopped? Let me stop it. Give me 2 hours and access to the media room. I'll hand you enough public pressure that even corrupt judges and bought politicians won't be able to ignore it. You'll also paint a target on your back so big that not even we can protect you. The target's already there. Has been since Mitchell showed up bleeding at my hospital. The only question is whether I use the time I have left to hide or to fight. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying Sarah like she was trying to see past the determination to whatever drove it. You're not doing this for justice, Morrison said finally. You're doing this because you can't let yourself fail again. Sarah felt the words hit like a physical blow. What? 2018. The operation that got you discharged. You saved civilians while your unit was being overrun. Command ordered you to retreat and you refused. People died because of that choice. Some of them your friends. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. How do you know about that? Because I read your actual military file, not the sanitized version. I know you blame yourself for those deaths, even though any objective analysis would conclude you made the right call. Morrison's voice softened slightly. And I know you've been trying to atone for that choice ever since, hiding in civilian work, staying quiet, never drawing attention. Until now. Until now. And I think part of you wants to die fighting this network because it would be easier than living with the guilt.
Sarah stood up. I didn't come here for therapy. No, you came here asking me to let you commit suicide by press conference. Morrison stood as well. And I'm saying no, not because I don't believe in your cause, but because martyrs don't win cases. Living witnesses do. Then help me stay alive long enough to testify. I'm trying, but you keep making it impossible. Sarah turned toward the door. Then I'll do it without your help. If you hold an unauthorized press conference from this building, I'll have you arrested myself. Sarah looked back. No, you won't. Because you know I'm right. You know the system is failing. And you know that sometimes the only way to win is to break the rules. She left Morrison's office before the assistant director could respond. Rodriguez was waiting in the lobby with the laptop bag and an expression of amused resignation. Morrison said no? Morrison said no. Are we doing it anyway? We're doing it anyway? Rodriguez grinned. Good. I'd hate to have prepared all this evidence for nothing. They found an empty conference room on the 3rd floor and started setting up. Rodriguez connected the laptop to a projector and pulled up files, financial records, encrypted messages, organizational charts showing the full scope of the network. This is everything, Rodriguez said. Names, dates, monetary transfers, proof of coordination between hospitals in 4 states. More than enough to destroy Apex Medical Holdings and everyone connected to it. Sarah studied the evidence. It was comprehensive, damning, and completely inadmissible in court without proper chain of custody. But court wasn't the goal anymore. Public outrage was.
Martinez appeared in the doorway. Morrison's on the warpath. She knows you're planning something.
Let her be angry. I'm doing this with or without her blessing.
I figured. Martinez handed Sarah a flash drive. That's every witness statement we've collected. Every family member of Webb's victims who agreed to talk to us. Their stories, their losses, their demands for justice. Sarah took the drive. Why are you helping me? Because Morrison's wrong. Sometimes martyrs do win cases. They just don't live to see it. Martinez's smile was sad. Make it count, Bennett. She left without waiting for a response. Sarah was loading the witness statements onto Rodriguez's laptop when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello. Ms. Bennett, the same cultured voice from before, the man who'd given her 12 hours. I'm calling to extend one final courtesy. Walk away now and we'll consider the matter closed. And if I don't, then we release evidence that you've been working with Marcus Webb from the beginning. Fake communication showing coordination, fabricated financial transfers, witnesses who will testify they saw you conspiring with him. The man's tone was almost apologetic. We'll destroy what's left of your credibility so thoroughly that even your own allies won't believe you. Sarah looked at the evidence on Rodriguez's screen, at the proof of systematic murder disguised as medical care, at the names of 37 surgeons who'd valued money over human life. Do your worst, she said. You're making a mistake. I've made bigger ones. She hung up. Rodriguez looked up from the laptop. That sounded ominous. They're going to try to discredit me, fabricate evidence that I was working with Webb. Will it work? Sarah thought about all the people who'd dismissed her, mocked her, called her unstable and vengeful. She thought about the reporters who'd already painted her as mentally unfit to testify, about the warrant from Detroit PD and the allegations of evidence tampering. Probably, but it won't matter if the truth is already public. She pulled out her phone and started recording a video. My name is Sarah Bennett. I'm a trauma nurse, a former military medic, and a witness to systematic medical fraud that has resulted in at least 32 deaths across 6 states. What I'm about to show you is evidence of a network that profits from unnecessary surgeries, fraudulent insurance claims, and the murder of patients who became financially inconvenient. Sarah spoke for 20 minutes, laying out the entire scope of the network. She named names. She cited financial transfers. She explained how Apex Medical Holdings coordinated between hospitals to maximize profits regardless of patient outcomes. And then she played the messages from Webb's burner phone. These are communications between Dr. Marcus Webb and associates planning attacks on federal witnesses. Discussion of a clean sweep operation to eliminate anyone who could threaten their network. Approval for violence against people who only wanted justice for their dead loved ones. Sarah ended the video with a direct appeal. If you've lost someone to this network, if you've suspected that your loved one's death wasn't just bad luck or complications, I'm telling you now, you were right. They were murdered for profit, and the people responsible are still operating, still performing surgeries, still killing patients. The only way to stop them is to make sure everyone knows what they've done. She uploaded the video to every social media platform Rodriguez could access. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Within minutes, it was spreading, shared and reshared by people who recognized the names of the hospitals, the surgeons, the victims. Rodriguez monitored the engagement. It's going viral. 500,000 views in the first 10 minutes. Sarah's phone started ringing constantly. Reporters, victims' families, random people demanding answers or offering support or threatening violence. She ignored all of it and focused on preparing for the press conference. Morrison burst into the conference room 30 minutes later with 4 agents behind her. What have you done? The assistant director demanded. Sarah gestured to Rodriguez's laptop. I've given the victims' families the truth, something the FBI should have done weeks ago. You've contaminated evidence, violated witness protection protocols, and potentially destroyed any chance of successful prosecution. Or I've created so much public pressure that your prosecutors will actually have to do their jobs. Morrison looked at the laptop screen showing the video's view counter, climbing past 2 million. Her expression was difficult to read, anger mixed with something that might have been admiration. You're forcing my hand, Morrison said quietly. Good. Make the right choice. If I let you hold this press conference, every defense attorney in the country will cry foul. They'll claim media contamination, prejudicial publicity, denial of due process. Let them. The families of 32 dead people don't care about defense attorneys' complaints. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. This is Assistant Director Morrison. I need the media room prepared for an emergency press conference in 30 minutes. Full security detail. And get me the U.S. attorney on the line. We're filing charges tonight. She hung up and looked at Sarah. You get 1 hour. You present your evidence, you tell your story, and then you submit to FBI protection whether you like it or not. Understood? Understood. Morrison turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Bennett, I hope you survive this. You're either the bravest person I've met or the most reckless. Maybe both. The media room filled quickly. Reporters from every major network, local news crews, independent journalists. The live stream had over 5 million viewers before Sarah even walked to the podium. She stood there for a moment, looking at the cameras and the faces behind them, thinking about everyone who'd told her to stay quiet, everyone who'd dismissed her concerns, everyone who'd valued convenience over truth. Then she began. My name is Sarah Bennett, and I'm here to tell you about a network that has murdered dozens of people for profit. For the next hour, Sarah walked the media through everything. She showed the financial records connecting Apex Medical Holdings to 17 hospitals. She displayed the encrypted messages proving coordination between surgeons. She named Catherine Webb as a founding board member and detailed her role in creating the network. She told the stories of the victims. Thomas Harrison, dead from complications that should never have happened. The patients whose insurance made them valuable targets. The families who'd been lied to about preventable deaths. And she showed the burner phone messages discussing her own elimination. These people tried to kill me twice, Sarah said. They sent a team into the FBI building. They blew up a hospital parking lot. They murdered a federal prosecutor to protect their network. And they did all of this because they know that if the truth comes out, everything they've built collapses. The room was completely silent. Sarah pulled up the final slide, a list of names. 37 surgeons, 12 administrators, 5 insurance executives. These are the people responsible. I'm giving you their names because the families of their victims deserve to know who murdered their loved ones. Because the patients they're treating right now deserve to know they're in danger. And because the only way to stop this network is to make it impossible for them to hide. She stepped back from the podium. That's all I have. Questions? The room exploded with noise. Reporters shouting over each other, cameras flashing, chaos spreading like a shockwave. Sarah answered questions for another 30 minutes. Where did you get the evidence? How many people have died? Why didn't you come forward sooner? Are you afraid for your life? To that last question, Sarah gave the only honest answer she could. Yes, I'm terrified, but I'm more afraid of staying silent. The press conference ended with Martinez escorting Sarah out of the media room while reporters continued shouting questions. Rodriguez had already disappeared, gone before anyone could identify or question the source of the technical evidence. Sarah was halfway to a secure room when her phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Apex Medical Holdings CEO found dead in apparent suicide. She showed the alert to Martinez. They're cleaning house. Let them. Every suspicious death just proves your case. They reached the secure room, a windowless space with armed guards stationed outside. Martinez locked the door behind them. You need to stay here until we can arrange proper protection. Morrison's coordinating with... Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and felt ice run through her veins. Catherine Webb. She answered on speaker so Martinez could hear. Hello, Catherine?
You stupid, stupid woman! Catherine's voice was shaking with rage. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Exposed you, destroyed your network, made it impossible for you to operate. You've started a war. The people behind Apex won't just fold because you had a press conference. They'll burn everything down before they let you win. Let them try. They won't try. They'll succeed. Catherine's laugh was bitter. You think those 37 names you released were the whole network? That was just the visible layer. The real power is deeper, untouchable, and you've just made yourself the primary target. Good. Better me than more innocent patients. You won't be a martyr, Sarah. You'll just be dead. And when you are, I'll still be here. Different name, different company, same operation. You can't stop this. Sarah looked at Martinez, who was already signaling agents outside the room.
We're tracing this call, Sarah said. Where are you, Catherine? Somewhere you'll never find me. Somewhere I can watch everything you built fall apart. Catherine's voice dropped to something colder. You wanted justice? Fine. Let's see how just the world is when everyone you care about starts dying. The line went dead. Martinez was already on her radio. I need a trace on that call and immediate protection details on everyone connected to Sarah Bennett. Mitchell, Kim Patterson, Patricia, everyone. Sarah stood there, numb, processing Catherine's threat. She'd exposed the network. She'd given the victims' families answers. She'd done everything right, and she'd just painted targets on everyone she'd ever cared about. Her phone buzzed one more time. Message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Sarah opened it and felt her heart stop. The image showed Mitchell's hospital room, current, real-time. Someone was there right now, standing outside with a clear view of the federal officer sleeping in his bed. Below the photo, a single line of text. Checkmate. Sarah was moving before Martinez could stop her. She burst through the secure room door, past the surprised guards, and sprinted toward the elevator. Martinez's shouts echoed behind her, but Sarah didn't slow down. Mitchell's hospital was 12 minutes away. Whoever sent that photo had already been there long enough to take it. 12 minutes might already be too late. The elevator doors opened and Sarah nearly collided with Rodriguez stepping out. I saw the photo, Rodriguez said. FBI is sending a team, but not fast enough. Sarah pushed past into the elevator. You coming or not? Rodriguez didn't hesitate. They hit the parking garage at a dead run. Sarah's car was blocked by 2 FBI vehicles, so they took Rodriguez's motorcycle instead. Sarah climbed on behind, and Rodriguez gunned the engine before she was fully settled. Detroit traffic blurred past as they weaved between cars at speeds that would have gotten them arrested under normal circumstances. Sarah's phone was pressed to her ear, calling Mitchell's room directly. No answer. She tried the nurse's station. A tired voice picked up on the 4th ring. ICU, this is Brenda. This is Sarah Bennett. I need you to check on James Mitchell immediately. Room 604. Federal protection detail should be outside his door. Ma'am, I can't just... There's an active threat against him. Check now. Sarah heard movement, then a sharp intake of breath. The guards are gone. The door's open. I'm calling security. Don't go in there. Lock down the floor and wait for FBI backup. Sarah hung up and held on tighter as Rodriguez accelerated through a red light. They reached the hospital in 8 minutes. Rodriguez parked illegally at the emergency entrance and they ran for the elevators. Sarah hit the call button 3 times before giving up and taking the stairs instead. 6 floors. Sarah's lungs burned by the 3rd, but she didn't slow down. Behind her, Rodriguez kept pace without complaint. The ICU floor was in controlled chaos. Nurses gathered near the station, security guards blocking the hallway, and at the far end, Mitchell's door standing open. Sarah pushed through the crowd. A security guard tried to stop her, but Rodriguez flashed something that looked official enough to make him step aside. Mitchell's room was empty. The bed was unmade, monitors disconnected, IV stand knocked over. Signs of a struggle, but no blood. No body. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another photo. This one showed Mitchell being walked out a side entrance by 2 men in hospital staff uniforms. He was conscious, moving under his own power, but clearly drugged. The timestamp was 4 minutes ago. Below the image, south parking structure, level 3, come alone or he dies. Sarah showed Rodriguez. It's a trap, obviously. I'm going anyway. Also obvious. Rodriguez pulled out a pistol from somewhere under the jacket. FBI will be here in 5 minutes. We stall until then. Sarah took the weapon Rodriguez offered her, a compact 9mm that felt heavier than it should. She'd qualified on similar models in the service, but hadn't fired one in years. I don't have backup magazines, she said. Then don't miss. They took the service stairs down to the parking structure, moving quietly. The stairwell was concrete and empty, their footsteps echoing despite efforts at stealth. Level 3 was dimly lit, half the fluorescent panels either broken or deliberately disabled. Sarah scanned the area, minimal cover, multiple sight lines, designed to give whoever was waiting all the advantages. A van sat near the far wall, side door open. Mitchell was visible inside, slumped against the interior wall. The 2 men from the photo stood outside, weapons visible. One of them called out, "Ms. Bennett, thank you for being punctual." Sarah stepped into the open, keeping the pistol low but ready. Rodriguez hung back in the shadows. "Let him go," Sarah said. "Of course. Once you've answered a few questions." The man smiled. He was older than the others she'd encountered. Maybe 60, expensive suit, the kind of casual confidence that came from never facing real consequences. "Who else has copies of the evidence you presented tonight?" "Everyone. It's already public." "The video, yes, but the financial records, the encrypted messages, the full scope of our network. Who else has access to those files?" Sarah understood immediately. The press conference had damaged them, but the raw evidence was what would destroy them completely. If they could eliminate everyone who had copies, they could claim fabrication, challenge authenticity, create enough doubt to survive. "You're wasting your time," Sarah said. "Rodriguez sent everything to journalists, congressional oversight, watchdog groups. Killing me changes nothing." "Perhaps, but it sends a message to anyone else considering similar action." The man nodded to his associate, who raised a weapon toward Mitchell. "Last chance, Miss Bennett. Who has the files?" Sarah's finger moved to the trigger. She could take one shot before they killed Mitchell, maybe hit the man with the gun, maybe give Rodriguez time to take out the other one. Too many maybes. Then she heard it. The distant sound of sirens. Multiple vehicles getting closer fast. The man heard it too. His expression tightened. "Answer the question." "No?" "Then Officer Mitchell dies." "Then you die too," a new voice said. Martinez stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, weapon trained on the man in the suit. 4 more FBI agents emerged from various positions around the parking structure, all armed, all with clear shots. "Drop the weapons," Martinez ordered. "This doesn't have to end with anyone dead." For a moment, nobody moved. The man in the suit looked between Martinez, Sarah, and the agents surrounding him, calculating odds, weighing options. Then he smiled. "You're right, it doesn't." He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. Nothing happened. The man's smile faltered. He pressed again, then looked at Sarah with dawning realization. "You found the bombs," he said quietly. Sarah shook her head. "We stopped you from planting them. FBI's been tracking your people since the hospital explosion. Every move, every location, every vehicle. You never had a chance." The man's composure cracked. He looked at his associate, who was already lowering his weapon and stepping back with hands raised, looked at the FBI agents closing in from all sides, looked at the phone in his hand that was supposed to trigger explosives that didn't exist. "On the ground," Martinez commanded. "Now." Both men complied. Agents moved in quickly, securing them and pulling Mitchell from the van. The federal officer was conscious but groggy, blinking at Sarah like he wasn't sure she was real. "Told you I'd keep you safe," Sarah said. Mitchell managed a weak smile. "Keep making promises like that, and I'll start believing them." Paramedics arrived moments later, checking Mitchell while FBI agents processed the scene. Sarah stood off to the side, watching it all with a strange sense of detachment. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a quiet nurse on the night shift. Now she was standing in a parking garage at midnight, surrounded by federal agents and arrested conspirators. Martinez approached, holstering her weapon. "We've been monitoring everyone connected to Apex for the past 6 hours. The moment your press conference went live, they started scrambling, made it easy to track their movements. You used me as bait. You used yourself as bait. We just made sure you survived it." Martinez's expression softened. Catherine Webb was arrested 20 minutes ago trying to board a private plane to Singapore. She's looking at multiple life sentences. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. What about the others, the surgeons, the administrators? Warrants issued for all 37 names you released. Most of them are already in custody. The ones who ran won't get far. Martinez pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a news alert. And this is trending nationwide. The headline read, "Medical Fraud Network Exposed. Dozens arrested in multi-state investigation." Below that, photos of Webb being led into federal court in handcuffs. Catherine Webb hiding her face from cameras. The CEO of Apex Medical Holdings, the one who'd supposedly committed suicide, actually alive and under arrest. "They faked his death?" Sarah asked. "Tried to. We found him 4 hours ago hiding in a Lake Michigan estate. Apparently decided living in prison was better than dying to protect the network." Martinez pocketed her phone. It's over, Sarah. You won.
Sarah looked at Mitchell being loaded into an ambulance, at Rodriguez leaning against the motorcycle, watching everything with that same alert intensity, at the FBI agents securing evidence and processing arrests. Doesn't feel like winning, she said quietly.
It never does. Not at first. Martinez put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. But tomorrow, when families start getting answers about their loved ones, when patients realize they're safe from the surgeons who would have killed them, that's when it'll feel real. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of depositions, media interviews, and coordination with prosecutors building cases against everyone involved. Sarah told her story so many times it started to feel rehearsed, but she forced herself to stay present for each telling. Every detail mattered. Every victim deserved her full attention. Marcus Webb's trial was fast-tracked. With Catherine's testimony as part of her plea agreement, with the financial records Rodriguez had provided, with Sarah's first-hand accounts of his actions, the case was overwhelming. Webb's lawyers tried every tactic: claims of coercion, challenges to evidence, attacks on witness credibility. But the sheer volume of proof made defense impossible. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sarah watched the verdict from the gallery, surrounded by families of Webb's victims. When the foreman read guilty for the 32nd time, once for each death, someone started crying. Then someone else. Soon half the room was weeping with relief and grief and exhausted rage. Sarah sat still and silent, feeling nothing at all. Webb was led away in handcuffs without looking at the gallery, without acknowledging the families, without showing any remorse for what he'd done. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Sarah asking for statements. She gave them one sentence. Justice doesn't bring back the dead, but it honors their memory. That has to be enough. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the rebuilt trauma wing of Riverside General Hospital, no longer working there, but attending its dedication ceremony. The hospital had undergone complete restructuring after the scandal. New administration, new oversight committees, new protocols designed to prevent the kind of systematic fraud that had killed so many. And a memorial wall listing the names of 32 victims. Patricia found Sarah standing in front of it, reading names she'd memorized months ago.
I still can't believe I didn't see it, Patricia said quietly. All those incident reports you filed, all those questions you raised, I should have listened.
You weren't the only one who didn't see it. That's how they got away with it for so long. Doesn't make it okay. No, Sarah agreed. It doesn't. They stood in silence for a moment. What are you doing now? Patricia asked. I heard the FBI offered you a job. They did. Consulting position helping identify medical fraud in other systems. Sarah smiled slightly. Turns out my particular skill set is more valuable than I thought. You gonna take it? Sarah looked at the memorial wall, at the names of people who'd trusted a system that failed them, at the families who'd spent years without answers. Yeah, she said. I think I am, because the truth was, Sarah Bennett had spent 3 years trying to be invisible, trying to convince herself that keeping her head down and doing her job was enough, that she could leave the fight behind and just exist quietly. But some people weren't built for quiet. Some people were built to run into burning buildings when everyone else ran out. To stand up when staying silent was easier, to fight battles that seemed unwinnable because the alternative was letting bad people win. Sarah had tried to be someone else. It hadn't worked. Time to stop pretending. Mitchell found her an hour later, still recovering but mobile enough to attend the ceremony. He looked thinner, tired, but alive. Rodriguez send you? Sarah asked. Rodriguez doesn't send me anywhere. I'm a federal officer, not an errand boy. Mitchell paused. But yeah, Rodriguez wanted me to give you this. Oh. He handed Sarah an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a phone number and 3 words. When you're ready. Sarah pocketed it. Ready for what? Whatever comes next. Rodriguez has been tracking other networks. Medical fraud is just one piece. There's more out there. Bigger operations, more victims. People who need someone like you to give a damn. Someone like me. Someone who can't walk away from a fight, even when walking away would be smarter. Mitchell's expression was serious. You saved my life twice now, saved a lot of lives. But this work, it doesn't stop. There's always another Webb, another Catherine,
another network that needs exposing. Sarah looked around the memorial wing, at the families gathered to remember loved ones, at the hospital trying to rebuild trust after betraying it, at the systems slowly, painfully learning to do better. "I know," she said. Mitchell studied her face. "You're going to do it anyway." "Yeah, I am." Because that was the truth Sarah had finally accepted about herself. She wasn't meant to be the quiet nurse in the background, wasn't meant to hide or fade or pretend the world's injustices weren't her problem. She was meant to fight. Not because it was easy or safe or sensible, but because some battles needed people willing to risk everything to win them. Because silence in the face of evil was its own form of collaboration. Because someone had to stand up and say, "Not on my watch," even when standing up meant standing alone. The ceremony ended with speeches from hospital administrators promising transparency and accountability, with family members sharing memories of loved ones lost, with a moment of silence that felt both too short and unbearably long. Sarah slipped out before the reception, not ready for more questions or gratitude or attention. She'd done what needed doing. That would have to be enough. Rodriguez was waiting outside, leaning against that same motorcycle. "Figured you'd leave early," Rodriguez said. "Figured you'd show up anyway." "Yeah, well, someone has to make sure you don't get yourself killed now that the FBI isn't watching you 24/7. Sarah almost smiled. "I can take care of myself." "I know, seen you do it." Rodriguez pulled out a folder. "But you shouldn't have to do it alone. New case, different network. Medical supply fraud this time. Selling expired medication to hospitals. Pocketing the difference. At least 15 deaths so far." Sarah took the folder but didn't open it. "Why me?" "Because you're good at this. Because you give a damn when most people don't. Because you've got nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." Rodriguez met her eyes. "And because I think you're tired of pretending you're anything other than exactly who you are." Sarah opened the folder, looked at the names, the hospitals, the victims. Another network of people profiting from suffering. Another fight that would be difficult and dangerous and probably thankless. Another chance to do something that mattered. "When do we start?" Sarah asked. Rodriguez grinned. "How about now?" They rode into Detroit evening traffic, two people nobody had taken seriously until it was too late, already planning their next move against systems that thought themselves untouchable. Behind them, Riverside General Hospital stood as both memorial and warning. Proof that corruption could be exposed, that networks could be dismantled, that one person refusing to stay silent could change everything. Sarah Bennett had been dismissed as just a nurse, mocked for her caution, called unstable when she spoke up, threatened when she refused to back down. She'd survived it all, and now she was done surviving. Now she was hunting. Somewhere in Detroit, another Marcus Webb was performing unnecessary surgeries. Another Catherine was building networks of exploitation. Another victim was trusting a system that would fail them. But this time, someone was coming for them. Someone who knew exactly what it felt like to be overlooked and underestimated. Someone who'd turned that dismissal into a weapon. The quiet nurse nobody noticed was gone. In her place stood something far more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to prove and everything left to fight for. And she was just getting started.